15 CSIR research projects in danger over USAID funding. And Education Forum is a shared responsibility. So education reform is a shared responsibility that's coming from President Mahama. OSP removes Ken Oforiatta from wanted persons list, and Mahama declares assets, instructs ministers appointees to do same. Health Minister briefs Parliament on cholera meningitis. President Mahama lauds Education Minister for bringing back PTAs, and Muntaka commends police for image improvement. National Education Forum opens in Ho. And also, President Mahama apologizes to faith-based organization for unpardonable omission from the National Education Forum. And also, Minister of Interior visits Ghana Prison Service. Then Minister pays familiarization visits to security agencies in Eastern region. Newly appointed administrator of MDF meets management and staff. Let's get into the stories here on the Business Breakfast on Zed. I have joining me over the phone lines Abel and Soliwin Amodiok to break down some of these headlines. Abel, good morning.
Good morning, Lee.
Abel, how are you doing?
Nick, I'm doing very well. What about you, Nick?
Yeah, I'm doing very well myself. I'm suspecting that you're already on the move this morning.
Yes.
Thank you very much for taking time to talk to us anyway. Well, let's start from the story on Zed Multimedia, our online platform. There's a story. The very first story is that IMF extension uncertain, and that's coming from Professor Bokpin. Now, the economist Professor Godfred Bokpin believes President Mahama's decision to immediately rule out an extension of the IMF program is a tactical one. Now, the president has affirmed that his administration has no immediate plans to extend Ghana's current $3 billion IMF facility. Speaking in an interview with Bloomberg at the Munich Security Conference last Monday, President Mahama clarified that while future extensions remain an option, his government is presently committed to adhering to the existing program. And we spoke to Professor Bokpin, and then he says that he believes that President Mahama's decision to immediately rule out the extension of the IMF program is a very tactical one. Let's start from there, Abel. This morning, what are your thoughts?
Okay, I think I followed the conference in which the president made that particular remark, and I also tried looking into the policy document that brought the current administration to power and their position on the IMF. And I think that if you examine their policy on the economy, the conversation around it said that they were going to stick to the IMF plan and work it out. So I think that the president wanted to make that also clear, that we are going to deal with the existing plan, and then when we get to the bridge, we'll cross it. I don't know the repercussions of this particular statement, but what I do know is that the president was also signaling to the IMF that we have a 3-year contract with you. Once that 3-year contract, we are working and determined to keep to that 3 year, and then we are done with you. Because there are a lot of, the government also don't forget that when you are under an IMF program, it comes with some certain conditionalities. You are not able to tweak certain things in the way that you want to tweak them yourself, and also so because of those conditions, it limits certain initiatives of government, and the government only has a 4-year mandate without renewal. So you want to run the country and achieve certain particular results. The IMF can help you, but the extent to which they can help you is also an issue. Already, you would have seen some reports that suggest that part of the agreement was that government cannot borrow from external sources beyond $250 million. If you look at some of the promises, if I should put it, by the current administration, and if you look at the revenue that the country is currently generating, if you can even look at last year's total revenue and how much we had to pay in terms of interest on interest and principals. I mean, in terms of loans that we owe, even though some were suspended, but some payments had to be done to domestic bondholders. This year, for example, at the beginning of the year, somewhere January, some money had to pay. The government, just I think Monday, issued some payments to domestic bondholders and some money into the sinking fund too. So government is tight. The little physical space it has that it can borrow to, the IMF says you can't borrow beyond a certain amount.
Right.
So you have to now be negotiating with your bilateral partners and other developmental partners to assist you in certain areas. It's really a very tight corner that the current administration is in. And maybe they would want to exit the IMF program at an early stage or as per its current schedule so that they can make some adjustments to the economy in a way that the IMF might not really agree. Also, you will agree that there are currently some people who also, like I mentioned yesterday, because of ideological differences, there are other people who believe that under an IMF program, you are basically going nowhere. That you are basically not developing. Nothing will happen to your economy.
Right.
You are under the impression or illusion that there is some stability that is being brought to your administration. But at the end of the day, immediately you exit the IMF program. How is it that you are under a program that is supposed to move your country forward? Then immediately you exit the program, there is chaos, So you must find a homegrown solution to that particular issue. Whatever the challenges are, whatever the problems are, you must find a homegrown solution to that.
Right.
And you see that is what maybe the government is trying to do, because you look at the fact that there's a national economic forum that is on its way coming. So all these conversations, I'm sure by the end of this year, the government will have a clear picture.
Right.
The government will have a clear picture of what it wants to do.
Right.
And whether it intends to go with the homegrown policy or it intends to stick with the IMF program. And that is why he said it's an option that is there for them to take or not to take.
Right. You're right. And I think I get exactly what you're saying, because over the years, people have complained about how IMF gives us certain conditionalities when it comes to facilities, and I think that those are the things that in the global markets, those are some of the things that are bound to happen. The moment you go for certain loans, they have to restrict you in certain aspects, and I think over the past few years we've seen freezing public employment and all of that as some of the conditionalities that we face. And so if President Mahama says he's not going to extend it, even though it's an option, he says that is not what he's looking at. He's looking at how to generate some internal funds to be able to run the country. And I think that's a very good thing. Now, Abel, moving away from that, there's a story on housing, affordable housing. Now, you agree with me that housing is a very major challenge here in Ghana. According to the statistics, we have about almost 2 million units deficit of houses that we need to put up to be able to cater for some Ghanaians. And yesterday we had a conversation with an affordable housing advocate, Jonathan Amika Shiviklu, and he raised a concern that, over the past few years, we've been talking about governments putting together some affordable housing, and what have you. But we've not really seen none of those projects have seen the light of day, right? From somewhere in 2004 when we started putting together some of these things. We've seen the Saglemi housing project and all of that. It hasn't seen the light of day. And his argument is that instead of government focusing on building, or the conversation has been partner with private sector and put out the buildings. Now he says that government shouldn't focus on constructing the buildings. All they have to do is to engage the private entities. And what the private entities will do is that they will come in and put up the buildings, but government will absorb certain expenditure that they usually incur. Now, for instance, when they develop certain estates, you realize that these days they have to do their own roads. They have to put in place electricity. They have to put in place all kinds of things, water and all of that, connecting water and all of that. And that comes with additional cost. And that is the cause of the rise in our pricing when it comes to housing. And he says that government should focus on absorbing those ones and then leave the private entities to construct the buildings, and then government will just give it out to people as and when, and that will help us solve the housing crisis here in Ghana. What are your thoughts?
But me, that is basically what government does. If you call the famous STS bill that His Excellency of blessed memory, Professor Ivan Satamil, initiated, it is not that the government was going to build it anyway. Government had an agreement with external stakeholders. They were going to get people to come and build at a particular cost which government will pay. If you look at Sagleme, even though it's a government initiative, is it government? Is it the State House Corporation that is building it? No. You get the point I'm making. So at every point in time, when government takes the initiative to build affordable housing, it does that in partnership with the private sector. The issue of affordable housing is the cost. And whether construction of roads or whatever, I don't think that is a problem. I think the problem is that government have not really prioritized the affairs of its people well, especially when it comes to affordable housing. Because when you build affordable housing, and the examples that we already have in the system, you go there, the rent is not affordable to the Ghanaian, or even, let's say, the average or middle class working person. It's not affordable to them at all. And if you look at the housing architecture that we also want to put up, there is this idea of 2-bedroom with things, and I always say that it seems that we are not guided by our own values and principles as a nation.
Why do you say that?
Because if you are guided by your own values and principles, it must be seen in some of these developmental projects. What is Ghana's position when it comes to building affordable housing? What must an average Ghanaian, how much must it cost an average Ghanaian to afford a home for, let's say, a year or 2 years or 5 years? How much must it cost an average Ghanaian to own a government-built home? Okay? Let's say you move in, first occupying it as a rent. If you want to pay for it and stay in it, how much should it cost you in all? In fact, in the designing of that particular affordable housing or whatever it is, what must it contain? You understand? What must the structures contain? Is it 3-4 bedroom houses and things with certain taste and things? Because we see other examples from your friend is saying, from other jurisdictions. And you see the simplicity with which they put some of these structures. and how the average people that stay in these structures that can afford them. It is not the case in Ghana. In Ghana, they build affordable homes. You hear that it's an affordable home. The next moment you go there, the people that are living there, we are all shocked. Like, you can't afford.
We're struggling to hear you.
Oh, sorry, I hope you can hear me now. Hello.
Loud and clear, yeah.
Sorry. So, I'm just making the point that government needs to sit down and take a practical decision that if you want to do affordable homes for Ghanaians, those homes must be indeed affordable according to the nomenclature. You don't build homes and you finish and then those homes are being charged all priced in dollars and things.
Well, of course, I mean, that is what the gentleman was trying to point out, that anytime government tries to do this, government will spend a longer time to be able to put up this building. And aside that, it also has some strain on public expenditure, because government will put in a lot of money, and at the end of the day, they also want to reap something, and so the prices will keep skyrocketing.
The private sector will not give us affordable homes. Because the private sector, you know the University of Ghana example. If you can hear me well, you know the University of Ghana example. When the halls were being managed by the University of Ghana, how much it cost. When the private sector came in, today, you know the issues on campus. For example, the prices average students can no longer afford. It is a competition among rich folks for rooms that is happening. In fact, the traditional halls that used to cost less than 1,000 Ghana cedis, where average people from average homes, I mean, humble beginnings from their villages and things, found solace in. Now you can't do so. In fact, the Minister for Education has to step in the other time. So I'm saying that when you have private hands in it, whether are there no roads on the University of Ghana campus? Is it not connected to already electricity and water already? And yet, when they take over the management of these things, day in, day out, private sector, they will always find a reason for increasing the prices. Do you understand me?
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying that there must be some level of commitment. There must be some level of political will that we want to do this. Of course, government's case is to protect the citizenry. And if you have to protect the citizenry at a particular cost, you have to do so. There is a point where government will be engaged in certain enterprises that will not yield profit. Government must come to that terms. It is not every time that you are going to get some profit from certain operations. The most important thing is having homes that Ghanaians can afford. And when I say Ghanaians, I mean average, normal, regular Ghanaians in their 1-2 papa job, they can afford. And so far as the amount they are paying is enough to run those affordable homes, that is the most important thing. The most important thing is for the places of our boat to be able to be run in a manner that if it is 30 years, 15 years, 20 years, government will be able to recoup the investment that have been put inside. But if you do so with the private sector, they don't have the patience to take 30 years or 50 years to do that recoupment.
Right.
You get the point I'm making? So there must be that political will and commitment that we want to do this, and we want to do it according to Ghanaian values. Look, how even the houses are modeled, where the houses are located. You get me? All those things must be factored, and we must begin to see some of these things done properly. We've been paying, it's lip services we've been paying into it, and anytime government wants to do these things, you see people with, like we are saying, this private interest. They come inside, and trust me, if government doesn't take a firm decision, the private interest and underworkings will always undermine the very affordability that government is seeking to do.
Right.
Because Segleme housing will finish, and average Ghanaians cannot afford it.
Yeah, because
that's the reality.
So according to him, in engineering, when a house, when you're doing a project and it spends more than 3 years, the prices would definitely skyrocket, right? And that is one of the issues that is leading to. Now you realize that when governments come into office, nobody wants to go touch the Saglemi housing. When you go and raise it, it becomes a problem. Do you understand? And I mean, that is something that is actually coming up now, because I have seen the Honorable Minister for Ketu North, Honorable Edem Agbana, has raised issues about that. I think last week, Thursday, he spoke about that on the floor of Parliament. Hopefully, they return the Rent Act that was proposed by Asenso Boachi, and then maybe they can have further conversations on that. Abel, we have just about a minute or two to go. Yesterday, we saw that the communications minister has ordered NCA to shut down 7 radio stations. People are saying that it is actually the same thing that President Akufo-Addo did that Mahama is repeating. What are your thoughts?
Oh no, how can you say the same thing? I mean, what's the reasoning to this? For example, the radio station in Boko, he gave clear reasons for why that particular radio station had to, and he said it's a national security recommendation that it should be shut down. I don't think we all know what is happening in Boko, unless we're happy with what is happening in Boko. And what is happening in Boko is not just happening in Boko now; it's having a spillover effect in other jurisdictions now. At least initially, when they talk about the Boko conflict, you knew that it was within the Boko enclave, between Kutiga and then Binduri area. Now, it is happening in Wale Wale. It is happening in part of, Wale Wale major. I mean, as a major.
Hey, can you raise your voice a bit?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I'm saying that the spillover effect is that a conflict that used to be in Boko has now spilled all the way to Wale Wale. We don't know when, but very soon, maybe another place will become a target, and before we see, we'll have a full-blown national crisis. Or that is if already we don't have. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And national security has recommended this to be done. In fact, also, unless we say that the minister is wrong, but when a radio frequency is being granted, it comes with certain conditions.
Right.
Are the radio stations that have been shut down or asked to shut down, have they complained that the conditions that they are being accused of, they've not met those conditions? If those radio stations come out to say that the conditions that they are being accused of not meeting, or the standards they are being accused of not meeting, then we can look into it. But so far, I've not heard from those media houses and whether it is true.
Well, I think it just came yesterday. We hope to hear from them maybe today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when we hear from them, we see. But we can all check the conditions that comes with granting of the frequencies and whether those radio stations have truly tracked them or not. But of course, we must also check. Look, there are a lot of frequencies springing up. It's good for our democracy. But Ghana's democracy is too young to handle the number of radio stations that are springing up each and every day. You understand?
Yeah.
And whether the MCA is truly capable of overseeing all these frequencies they are granting, we must have a conversation around it.
Right.
That is also not to say that people cannot be granted, but people must be granted where they can practice responsible and standard radio.
Well, basically, it's radio, the ethical radio standards.
Yes, it's very important.
Right.
Because if not, one day we wake up to a full national blown crisis orchestrated by people somewhere who don't know what they are discussing, who don't know what they are talking about. You know?
Right.
So it's very, very important.
Well, very important. Abel, thank you very much for making time this morning to speak to me here on the Business Breakfast. We're grateful. Please enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks.
Well, exactly 7 a.m. here on Business Breakfast on Zed. And up next is Business News with Samuela Enchi. Stay tuned.
Zed 101.9 FM.
Hello and welcome to the business news segment on Business Breakfast on Zed. Coming up, National Economic Dialogue to start from March 3, 2025. And also CD continues strong performance against dollar. $1 equals 15 cedis 75 pesos. And MPA sets new price floor for petroleum products. I am Samuela Inchi. Let's settle in for the details. The government has announced that the National Economic Dialogue will come off from March 3 to 4, 2025 at the Accra International Conference Center. A statement issued by the spokesperson to the President, Felix Kwakye Ofosu, on Tuesday, February 18, said the gathering would offer a platform for Ghanaians to respond to pressing economic challenges and forge actionable solutions to foster sustainable economic growth. President John Dramani Mahama would lead the dialogue with a keynote address themed Resetting Ghana, Building the Economy We Want Together. The statement further said the initiative represents a crucial step in fulfilling President Mahama's campaign promise to involve citizens in discussions that shape the economic future of the country. It said the dialogue aims to promote consensus and collaboration among participants regarding priority policies and structural reforms. The outcome of the forum is expected to mark the beginning of the journey towards economic revitalization, ultimately enhancing business opportunities and improving living conditions across the country. The Ghana cedi continued its strong performance against the US dollar in the retail market after a week of mixed performance against the major foreign currencies. It traded at an average of 15 cedis 75 pesos against the American greenback in the retail market after nearing 15 cedis 95 pesos on Friday, February 14, 2025. Its year-to-date loss stood at 0.63%. This is due to diminishing foreign exchange support amid repatriation and rising demand pressures potentially threatening the cedi's stability. Last week, the local currency remained stable in the retail market despite experiencing modest depreciation in the interbank market. Whilst the stability in the retail market was supported by subdued demand pressures, the volatility in the interbank market was primarily driven by tight foreign exchange supply. The cedi closed last week at 15 cedis 95 pesos to $1, reflecting a slight weekly gain of 0.48%. It, however, held steady against the British pound at 19 cedis 50 pesos, but weakened marginally by 0.31% against the euro, settling at 16 cedis 25 pesos. And so our last story for the segment. The National Petroleum Authority (NPA) has introduced a new price floor for petroleum products for the second pricing window of February, requiring oil marketing companies (OMCs) and LPG marketing companies to adhere strictly to the set minimum prices. The directive, effective from February 16 to 28, 2025, mandates that no company should sell fuel below the established threshold, with violators at risk of facing potential sanctions from the regulator. The price floor for petrol and diesel has been set at 12 cedis 56 pesos and 13 cedis 45 pesos per litre, respectively, while LPG has been fixed at 14 cedis 26 pesos per kilogram. The move aligns with the petroleum pricing guidelines, which seek to ensure stability in the downstream sector. The newly introduced price floors, however, do not factor in the premiums charged by international oil trading companies, operating margins of bulk import, distribution, and export companies, BIDECs, or the marketing and dealer margins of OMCs and LPGMCs. These cost components will continue to be determined independently by the companies as stipulated under the country's price deregulation policy. The NPA's enforcement of the price floor is expected to prevent price undercutting among industry players, which could destabilize the market. And that will be all for the business segment on Business Breakfast on Zed. We'll take a recap of the headlines. National Economic Dialogue to start from March 3, 2025. And also the CD continues strong performance against dollar. $1 equals 15 cedis, 75 pesos. MPA sets new price floor for petroleum products. I am Samuela Entry. Thanks for listening. And up next, a sports flash with Lukeman Evergreen Woman. Stay tuned.
Atrema, Casadodo and Fashema, Eradicaso, Namanya Maso. Just one word is all I need. Edurobetchewa, Atrema, Casadodo and Fashema, Eradicasa, Namanya Maso. Just one word is all I need. Your word is a yes and amen. Your words are true, you never lie. Whatever you say shall come to pass. What's every other voice, so yeah, it's an opinion, they can have it.
It's your lifestyle, lurcher, and business radio.
It's an opinion, they can have it.
Zed 101.9 FM.
Just this word, no long thing, oh Lord, I need your help, and no one else. Just this word, no long thing, oh Lord, I need your help, and no one else.
Demons tremble at your voice, mountains move when you roar, the dead will rise when you speak life. Wasam Yampa, every other voice, so yeah, it's an opinion, they can have it. Eradicaso, Casa, now what demons tremble at your voice, mountains move when you roar, the dead will rise when you speak life. Wasam Yampa, every other voice, so yeah, it's an opinion, they can have it. Eradicaso, Casa, now what Wasam, yes, Onyami Wasam, Wasam, yes, Onyami Wasam, Wasam, hey, Wasam, yes, Onyami Wasam, Wasam, yes, Onyami Wasam, Wasam.
It's your lifestyle, lurcher, and business radio.
Zed 101.9 FM.
Well, thank you very much for staying with us. Up next, a sports flash with Lukman Evergreen Moomin.
The stage is set for something special.
It is time to go racing.
Garnacho! Oh wow! Oh wow! The blind change with no regard for human life.
You couldn't write a script like this.
Here's Metzer. This is positive. Williams! Kudus! The Korean joy did not last for long.
Oh my gosh, Kudus.
Set back for Partey. Oh yes! Oh yes, Thomas Partey!
Hello, good morning. It's time for Sports Flash on a Business Breakfast on Zed. My name is Lukman. Evergreen moment. And now, last night was a giant killing fest in the UEFA Champions League. 7-time champions AC Milan have been eliminated. Now, tonight, the games could even see a much bigger upsets as Manchester City takes on Real Madrid as they try to settle their scores following that first leg in Manchester. Meanwhile, football returns in Ghana for the first time since the passing of Nana Pole. All right, we begin with some local football news, and the Ghana Football Association has organized a one-day training workshop for Premier League match commissioners to equip them with the necessary skills to enforce the newly enhanced match day safety and security protocols. The workshop held on Tuesday, February 18, 2025 at the Ghana FA Conference Room in Accra, focused on improving match day safety, protecting match officials, and ensuring smooth football operations across the country. Meanwhile, the president of the Ghana Football Association, Kurt Okreku, will visit the secretariat of Kumasi Asante Kotoko on Thursday, February 20th, to engage the club's leadership. According to a notice from Kumasi Asante Kotoko, the upcoming meeting is part of ongoing engagements following the tragic events of the Nana Chronomancer Park that led to the death of supporter Nana Pole. Now, talking about football returning, the FA Cup matches will continue at the round of 16 stage this weekend. Lower division side Atram Devisa will host Ghana Premier League side Bibiani Gold Stars at the Tuba AstroTurf on Friday, February 21st. On Saturday, Midiama will take on Park Academy at the TNA Park. Before that game, record holders Accra House of Oak will also make a short trip to the Tuba AstroTurf where they will be facing Golden Cake FC. Brekum Chelsea will take on Northern City at the Golden City Park, while Karela United host Young Apostles at the Aliu Mahama Sports Stadium in Tamale. Bechem United will take on Techiman Liberty Youth, with True Democracy also entertaining Nania FC at the Ni Eje Kreku II Park. The other game involving Kumasi Asante Kotoko and 11 Wise has been postponed due to the ongoing negotiations between the Ghana Football Association and the Porcupine Warriors. So some interesting news. Ashanti Regional MPP Chairman Bernard Entry Bosiako, popularly known as Chairman Wuntumi, has revealed plans to bring global football icons like Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, Neymar, and Vinicius Jr. to retire in Ghana. Yes, Chairman Wuntumi says that he is bringing them to retire in Ghana if he becomes the chairman of Kumasi Asante Kotoko. That's some big ambition from the MPP regional chairman for Ashanti region. Now to some national team football news. Black Queens have commenced their training tour in Morocco with their first session at the La Noria Club Equitation pitch in Casablanca. Now 19 players took part in the session under the supervision of head coach Kim Las Bjorkegren, with athletics coach Jordan Daite also leading the fitness drills. Away from the local scene to some European football action. Now Celtic's Champions League adventure came to a halt in a gut-wrenching fashion as Bayern Munich struck in the 94th minute to deny them a stunning victory in Germany and snatch a 3-2 aggregate victory. In Italy, Atalanta shockingly lost at home to Club Brugge by 3-1. AS Monaco and Benfica ended in a thrilling 3-3 draw in Portugal. Meanwhile, the biggest shocker was AC Milan getting eliminated by Feyenoord following a 1-1 draw in Italy. That game ended 2-1 on aggregate in favor of the Belgium outfit. The games continue tonight with Borussia Dortmund hosting Sporting Lisbon. Juventus are in Holland to face PSV. Now PSG will also engage Brest in an all-French affair, while Real Madrid welcome Manchester City to the Santiago Bernabeu. Well, away from football to some tennis news, Novak Djokovic has confirmed the partnership with Andy Murray as his coach will continue indefinitely. Now, three-time major winner Murray started working with his long-time playing rival on a trial basis at the January's Australian Open, where Djokovic reached the semi-final but was forced to retire with a hamstring injury. Meanwhile, Emma Raducanu was beaten by Karolina Muchova in a hard-fought match in the second round of the Dubai Tennis Championship. Now, there were concerns for the British wildcard early in the match as she appeared to be crying and breathing heavily after Muchova broke a 2-love lead. Well, after the NBA All-Star weekend, the games return tomorrow with LA Lakers facing the Charlotte Hornets. Now, the Indiana Pacers will be up against the Memphis Grizzlies. The Celtics will be engaging the Philadelphia 76ers. The New York Knicks will welcome the Chicago Bulls. Now, the Orlando Magic will be up against the Atlanta Hawks. The Brooklyn Nets are up against the Cleveland Cavaliers. While the LA Clippers will be facing the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, the Denver Nuggets are up against the Hornets, while the Phoenix Suns takes on the San Antonio Spurs. That'll be all for sports this morning. My name is Lukman Evergreen Moment. Business Breakfast on Zed continues with Need Trebi Hammond.
Stay tuned to your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio.
Zed 101.9 FM.
In the heart of Accra, nestled in the vibrant neighborhood of East Legon and New Beacon, a 360 multimedia firm has emerged. Introducing Zed Multimedia. With a steadfast focus on lifestyle, leisure, and business, we set out to bring high-value oriented programs that captivate the taste and desires of our audience. From the captivating airwaves of Zed 101.9 FM to the dynamic visuals of Zed TV and the innovative realms of Zed Digital and the incubation of advanced technological knowledge at Zed Tech, every facet of modern media is meticulously curated to engage and inspire. Also, let's not forget the New Finder newspaper, now under the Zed Multimedia umbrella, delivering insightful journalism with a business focus. Join us on the journey where innovation meets inspiration, where lifestyle meets leisure, and where business thrives. Change is here. Zed Multimedia, your lifestyle, leisure, and business platform.
Stay tuned to your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio.
It's your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio. It's your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio.
Jesus to the world, yeah. I was lost, low, needed a place to go. In the darkness, searching for light. You found me, Jesus, I made it right. With a melody in my heart, a song of joy that will never depart. Dancing your grace right from the start. You put that melody in my heart. Making melodies in my heart. Making melodies in my heart. Making melodies in my heart to the King of Kings. La 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 to the King of Kings. Every step you guide my way. In your love, I'm here to stay. Through the storm and through the rain. You comfort me, you ease my pain. You put a melody in my heart, a song of joy that will never depart. Dancing your grace right from the start. You put a melody in my heart. Making melodies in my heart. Making melodies in my heart. Making melodies in my heart to the King of Kings. La 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 to the King of Kings. Making melodies in my heart. Making melodies in my heart. Making melodies in my heart to the King of Kings. La 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 to the King of Kings.
It's your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio.
Zed 101.9 FM.
Stay tuned to your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio.
We gon' sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Shout hallelujah, hallelujah. I gotta do hallelujah, hallelujah. We gon' sing hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Shout hallelujah, hallelujah. I gotta do hallelujah, hallelujah. We gon' sing hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Shout hallelujah, hallelujah. I gotta do hallelujah, hallelujah.
It's your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio.
That's right. Listen, when I saw the wondrous cross and the price you paid on that day, come on, I count it all my joy. Jesus, your love did blow my mind. Everybody say, and the price you paid on that day. I count it all my joy. Jesus, your love. Oh, from heaven, Lord. Changed and restored my life. My life can't wash it. Sacrifice today. Jesus, I will love you always. 1, 2, 3, let's go, mama. I drop my hammer. That's right, say it. I drop my hammer. That's right. Nobody can do me like you. Lord, my life, I go there for you. Nobody can do me like the way you do. All my life, Lord, I go there for you.
It's your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio.
Turn my life around. Give me a new song to sing. Give me a new song to sing. You changed my life, you turned my life around. Hey, give me a new song to sing. Give me a new song to sing.
Zed 101.9 FM.
I'm yet to know if there is something you cannot change. My God, it is yet to show. You did do one simple. You're the Lord, you are mighty in battle. Before you, my issue is simple. Nobody did like you. For power to serve. Oh, Wendy, we are not beyond Wendy. You spoiled there for me. Not beyond Wendy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, Wendy, we are not love and kindness, I dey wonder, wonder. And yeah, so I don't count my blessings, cause it's been interesting what the Lord they do for me on the record. To deserve this love and kindness, I dey wonder, wonder. And yeah, so I don't count my blessings.
Evergreen Movement with Sports Flash, and also Samuela Entry with Business News. Another song in the background is Owanweni, Nyami Ye Owanweni by Nanaya Oforiata, the guy who did the You Dey Feel the Vibe tune. Right, now it's time for us to get into Business Brief this morning, and today I'm going to talk to you about internal controls at your workplace. Stay tuned. Yo, thank you very much for staying with me here on the Business Breakfast on Zed 101.9 FM. Now, this morning on Business Brief, I'm talking to you about internal controls. You see, in business, internal controls are like the brakes on a car. You may not always think about them, but when things start getting too fast in the wrong direction, or things start going too fast in the wrong direction, you will wish they were working. Now, without them, companies can spiral into financial disaster before anyone even realizes what's happening. Today, we're looking at two massive corporations, Enron and Toshiba, that collapsed. Not because they lacked money or talent, but because they failed to put strong internal controls in place. Now, let's start with Enron. If you were in business, or if you were in the business world in the late 1990s, you couldn't miss the name Enron. It was one of the most admired companies in the US. It was an energy giant that was praised for its innovation and rapid growth. But behind all the success, Enron was hiding something far worse than just a few bad business decisions. What went wrong? Enron were into fake profits and real losses. Enron's executives created fake partnerships and shady accounting tricks to hide billions in debt and make it look like they were making more money than they actually were. So that is one of the things that they did. They created fake partnerships and shady accounting tricks to hide billions in debt. They were owing a lot, but they hid all of that, making it look like they were making money than they were actually doing. Now, the question you may ask was that, where were the auditors? Because every organization, every serious organization would definitely have auditors that are checking the financials at all times. So you think that their auditors, Arthur and Anderson, would have caught it, right? Wrong. Instead of calling out the fraud, they helped cover it up because they were making millions from Enron in consulting fees. The auditors who were supposed to reveal, or as it were, outdoor or put in the open the ills of Enron, they were covering it up because they had a good relationship with Enron. Also, there was no accountability. Enron's internal controls were practically non-existent. They didn't have any, practically didn't have any internal controls. Executives had too much power, board members ignored warning signs, and the employees who questioned things were either silenced or fired. Now, in 2001, the truth came out, and Enron's house of cards collapsed. The company filed for bankruptcy, wiping out $74 billion in shareholder value. Thousands of their employees lost not only their jobs, but also their pensions and life savings. And what about their auditors, Arthur and Anderson? One of the world's top accounting firms, they went out of business for their role in the scandal. The auditors themselves went out of business because of that particular scandal. So what is the lesson? If a company isn't built on honesty and accountability, no amount of money or hype can save it. Maybe I should repeat it. If a company isn't built on honesty and accountability, no amount of money or hype can save that business. Let me talk to you about the second company, and that's in Japan, Toshiba. I'm sure many of you might know Toshiba as a company known for producing some of the best laptops, TVs, and electronics in the world. But here's a shocker. For over 7 years, Toshiba was lying about its financial health. Toshiba's executive wanted to profit. They wanted profit at all costs. So they pressured their employees to meet unrealistic targets, even if it meant faking the numbers. So in the public's eye, Toshiba was doing very well. But in reality, they were struggling. They also inflated profits. The company falsified financial reports, making it look like they were making or they were raking in more money than they actually were. Now, when the dust settled, it turned out they had overstated their earnings by $1.2 billion. Another thing that went wrong in Toshiba was that they had put in their internal audits were weak. The internal audit team either failed to catch the fraud or they were too afraid to challenge top management. Now, either way, no one held the executives accountable. And in 2015, when the scandal was exposed, It was a public relations nightmare. Toshiba CEO and several top executives resigned in disgrace. Investors panicked, their stock value plummeted, and the company had to lay off thousands of employees just to stay afloat. What lesson can we also pick from Toshiba? If a company prioritizes short-term success over long-term accountability, it will eventually pay the price. If a company prioritizes short-term success over long-term accountability, it will eventually pay the price. So what's the takeaway from today's business brief? Whether you're running a multinational corporation or a small business, one thing is clear. If you don't strengthen your internal controls, you are setting yourself up for failure. And that is one of the things that every business must pay attention to, internal controls. Without accountability, even the biggest companies can fail or can fall. Without accountability, no matter how big your company is, you can fall. Again, if your financial reports aren't truthful, reality will definitely catch up with you. Reality will definitely catch up with you. And also, a strong internal control system protects both the business and the people who work for it. So if you're in an organization, you are an employee, and the company is doing certain things that are wrong, do your best to point out, because when the bomb actually or finally explodes, it will affect you. So I say that a strong internal control protects both the business and the people who work for it. So think about it. If Enron and Toshiba, billion-dollar companies with top executives, could collapse because they ignored internal controls, what about your small business that you're running in Ghana? If these big companies, billion-dollar companies with all kinds of top executives, could collapse because they ignored internal controls, then your business, your small business that you're running in Ghana, it is even dead already. So the question I'm asking this morning is that, are companies paying enough attention to governance and accountability, or are we waiting for our own Enron moment? That is a question for you to answer. And we're going to talk more about this when we get into our roundtable discussion later in today's show. So stay tuned with me. That is all for Business Brief here on a Business Breakfast on Zed. Your internal controls really matter. And that is why we're going to have that conversation. How you can make your internal controls better. How you can strengthen it. And it's a conversation I think you shouldn't miss. So stay tuned. Up next is Transport Today. Solomon Tetenate will be joining me in studio to bring you all the updates in line with traffic and also the flight schedule. Stay tuned.
This is the pre-boarding announcement for flight 3728.
Ignition sequence. 3, 2, 1, 0. All engines running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Well, 20 to go before the top of the hour. And Solomon Tetenate is here to bring us Transport Today. Solu, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. What about you?
Yeah, I'm doing very well.
Thank God.
What's happening today?
Okay, so I'm taking through the flight schedules. Then we look at the traffic situation in town, and then what is trending in the aviation world.
Sure.
So let me start with the flight schedules. So I'm going with Passion Air. And then I'm starting with Accra to Kumasi Passion Air, the flight schedules for today.
Okay.
Today we have 6 flights available for Passion Air. First flight takes off from Accra 6:20 a.m. and then arrives in Kumasi at 7 a.m. and then takes off from Kumasi at 7:30 a.m. and then arrives in Accra at 8:10 a.m. Second flight takes off from Accra 8:50 a.m. and then arrives in Kumasi at 9:30 a.m. and then takes off from Kumasi at 10 a.m. and gets to Accra at 10:40 a.m. Third flight takes off from Accra 11:20 a.m. and then arrives in Kumasi at 12 p.m. and then takes off from Kumasi at 12:30 p.m. and then gets to Accra at 1:10 p.m. Fourth flight takes off from Accra 1:50 p.m. and then arrives in Kumasi at 2:30 p.m. and then takes off from Kumasi at 3 p.m. and gets to Accra at 3:40 p.m. Fifth flight takes off from Accra 4:20 p.m. and then arrives in Kumasi at 5 p.m. and then takes off from Kumasi at 5:30 p.m. and arrives in Accra at 6:10 p.m. And then the last flight for Passion Air Accra to Kumasi takes off from Accra 7:40 p.m. and then arrives in Kumasi at 8:30 p.m. and then takes off from Kumasi at 8:50 p.m. and gets to Accra at 9:40 p.m. So that is Passion Air Accra to Kumasi. Passion Air Accra to Takoradi, we have 2 flights available today. First flight takes off from Accra 6:20 a.m. and then arrives in Takoradi at 7:10 a.m. and then takes off from Takoradi at 7:40 a.m. and gets to Accra at 8:30 a.m. Second flight takes off from Accra 4:20 p.m. and then arrives in Takoradi at 5:10 p.m. and then takes off from Takoradi at 5:40 p.m. and gets to Accra at 6:30 p.m. So that is Passion Air Accra to Takoradi. Accra to Sunyani Passion Air, we have 1 flight available today, and it takes off from Accra 9:10 a.m. and then arrives in Sunyani at 10:10 a.m. and then takes off from Sunyani at 10:40 a.m. and then gets to Accra at 11:40 a.m. and then Accra to Wa Passion Air, we have 1 flight available today. It takes off from Accra 9:50 a.m. and then arrives in Wa at 11:30 a.m. and then takes off from Wa at 12 p.m. and gets back to Accra at 1:40 p.m. Accra to Tamale Passion Air, we have 3 flights available today. First flight takes off from Accra 6 a.m. and then arrives in Tamale at 7:20 a.m. and then takes off from Tamale at 7:50 a.m. and gets to Accra at 9:10 a.m. Second flight takes off from Accra 12:20 p.m. and then arrives in Tamale at 1:40 p.m. and then takes off from Tamale at 2:10 p.m. and gets to Accra at 3:30 p.m. Third flight, and that's the last flight for Passion Air Accra to Tamale, takes off from Accra 4 p.m. and then arrives in Tamale at 5:20 p.m. and then takes off from Tamale at 5:50 p.m. and gets to Accra at 7:10 p.m. So that is the flight schedules for Passion Air. Africa World Airlines Accra to Kumasi, we have 7 flights available today. First flight takes off from Accra 6:20 p.m. and then arrives in Kumasi at 7 p.m. and then takes off from Kumasi at 7:30 p.m. and gets to Accra at 8:10 a.m. I was talking about a.m. So second flight takes off from Accra 8:40 a.m. and then arrives in Kumasi at 9:20 a.m.
Right.
and then takes off from Kumasi at 9:50 a.m. and gets to Accra at 10:30 a.m. Third flight takes off from Accra 2:10 p.m. and then arrives in Kumasi at 2:50 p.m. and then takes off from Kumasi at 3:20 p.m. and gets to Accra at 4 p.m. and then the fourth flight takes off from Accra 4:30 p.m. and then arrives in Kumasi at 5:10 p.m. and then takes off from Kumasi at 5:40 p.m. and gets to Accra at 6:20 p.m. Fifth flight takes off from Accra 6:50 p.m. and then arrives in Kumasi at 7:30 p.m. and then takes off from Kumasi at 8 p.m. and gets to Accra at 8:40 p.m. And then the last flight for Africa World Airlines Accra to Kumasi takes off from Accra 7 p.m. and then arrives in Kumasi at 7:40 p.m. and then takes off from Kumasi at 8:10 p.m. and gets to Accra at 8:50 p.m. Accra to Takoradi Africa World Airlines. We have 3 flights available today. First flight takes off from Accra 6:40 a.m. and then arrives in Takoradi at 7:20 a.m. and then takes off from Takoradi at 7:50 a.m. and gets to Accra at 8:30 a.m. The second flight takes off from Accra 2:10 p.m. and gets to Takoradi at 2:50 p.m. and then takes off from Takoradi at 3:20 p.m. and then arrives in Accra at 4 p.m. Third flight takes off from Accra 4:30 p.m. and then arrives in Takoradi at 5:10 p.m. and then takes off from Takoradi at 5:40 p.m. and gets to Accra at 6:20 p.m. Accra to Tamale Africa World Airlines. We have 4 flights available today. Accra to Tamale. First flight takes off from Accra 6:30 a.m. and then arrives in Tamale at 7:30 a.m. and then takes off from Tamale at 8 a.m. and gets to Accra at 9 a.m. Second flight takes off from Accra 9:30 a.m. and then arrives in Tamale at 10:30 a.m. and then takes off from Tamale at 11 a.m. and gets to Accra at 12 p.m. Third flight takes off from Accra 12:30 p.m. and then arrives in Tamale at 1:30 p.m. and then takes off from Tamale at 2 p.m. and gets to Accra at 3 p.m. And then the last flight for Africa World Airlines Accra to Tamale takes off from Accra 3:30 p.m. and then arrives in Tamale at 4:30 p.m. and then takes off from Tamale at 5 p.m. and gets to Accra at 6 p.m. So that is all for the flight schedules today, both Passion Air and then Africa World Airlines. Let's look at the traffic situation in town. And at the moment, Hacho, welcome to Hacho Total Fuel Station. There's traffic over there, massive traffic. So if you're coming from Kwamenya, it would be best for you to use the Parakou road and then join West Legon and then use the Legon overpass to join Atomic Road. That would be the best for you to skip the traffic over there at the moment. And then Opebia to 37 Military Hospital. There's also traffic over there at the moment as we speak, so you take note of that. And then the motorway, Tema Motorway, Victory Bible Church International, all the way to Manet Motorway bus stop. There's also traffic over there that we should take note of. And then Sankara, right after Sankara, when you're going to Accra, right after Sankara to Ridge Runabout, the runabout over there, there's traffic, massive traffic from Sankara all the way through ADB and then Calbank all the way to the runabout. There's traffic over there if you're going to Accra, so we should take note of that. And then Weja Old Bus Stop to Malam Junction, there's also traffic over there as we speak, so we should take note of that. Emirates business class customers should look forward to yet another elevation of the in-flight experience, as an array of 80 new dishes will be launched on board this summer. So Emirates Airlines have assured their customers or their passengers that those that fly business class should look forward for 80 new dishes that will be served in the business class. Wow. But if I may ask, what class do you fly? What class do you fly?
I've not even flown before.
Wow. So that is for Emirates. So they are telling their passengers to look forward for this meticulous design by Moet and then Chandon's head chef of Michelin star renowned, that they are going to introduce 18 new dishes in their business class. And they say, yes, so each of the new dishes has been perfectly paired with an exclusive champagne. serving up the ultimate culinary collaboration in the sky. So that is from Emirates Airlines. So that is all for the transport today.
Thank you so much, Solo, for coming this morning and for bringing us the transport today. We're grateful. Well, thank you very much for staying with us here on the Business Breakfast on Zed. My name is Nicho Ebi Hammond. We're going to go into market trends. We're going to have a conversation with Emmanuel Boateng, economic analyst. Today we're talking about a few things in line with the report that the World Bank released in line with our economic situation here as a country. And so please stay tuned. But before that, we'll just take a quick music break. When we return, Emmanuel Boateng will join me for us to have that discussion. Stay tuned. For the past 2 days, I think since Monday, we've been trying to break down some of the things that the World Bank Public Finance Review of Ghana report. I'm trying to break down some of the things in there. And we've spoken extensively about what drives our economy as a nation. We've also spoken about how Ghana's debt accumulated to unsustainable levels. Yesterday, we looked at the weaknesses that exist in our public financial management, where our economic analyst Emmanuel Boateng actually made us understand that the gift mess is not fully integrated, and as a result, there's inconsistency in data across several sectors of the economy. And also, we spoke extensively about the strategic reforms that are necessary for long-term fiscal sustainability, and we spoke about revenue mobilization, expenditure efficiency, debt management, and sectorial development. Those were some of the things that we highlighted yesterday. Now, today we're going to analyze Ghana's declining revenue performance and also explore some strategies for improvement. Essentially, the revenue mobilization of the nation, the challenges and the opportunities that are there. Now, Emmanuel is over the phone lines this morning to help me do that. Ima, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Raphael.
Yeah. I hope you're doing well.
Very, very well, by God's grace.
Great. Kindly raise your voice a bit. I don't know whether it's from here or from your end, but please raise your voice a bit.
I'm doing very, very well, by God's grace.
Okay, great. Now, Ima, we want to analyze Ghana's declining revenue performance. Now, over the past few years, we've seen a sharp decline in our revenue performance as a nation. And today, I'd want us to analyze it and also explore some strategies for improvement. And we're going to focus on the revenue trends. We're talking tax system weaknesses and also tax expenditure, and then probably some policy lessons that we can draw from other countries on successful tax reforms. So let's start a conversation from here. What has been the trend in Ghana's revenue performance over the last decade, according to the report?
Right. Thank you very much. Good morning to all our wonderful listeners. It's been a great week. We've been having this discussion around the financial review report by the World Bank, or that was released by the World Bank. And today we want to focus on the revenue mobilization efforts of the country. And I must say, first of all, that our domestic revenue performance has not been stable. I mean, it has been changing. It has been fluctuating significantly over the past decade. From 2010 to 2017, for example, revenue collection as a percentage of GDP increased. It peaked around 16% in 2017. However, from 2017 onwards, revenue generated decelerated. It declined to about 13% of GDP by 2021. This decline occurred despite consistent GDP growth. Do you understand that? In other words, GDP was growing. Is that okay? Consistently. However, revenue collection efforts was not growing in line with the GDP growth, and so we couldn't sustain it.
I see.
Is that okay? And that was indicating some weaknesses in our tax policy and our tax administration in general. So revenue to GDP ratio fell from 16% in 2017 to 13% in 2018. You know, our revenue performance remains below the sub-Saharan African average of 18%. And so that is a very crucial thing.
Right.
Now, yeah, that would be my answer to that question.
Now, and I'm curious, what factors contributed to the decline in tax revenue performance?
Right, and that's a very, very good question. The tax, the decline in our tax revenue performance can be attributed to several factors. Yesterday, I started with some. We have a very narrow tax base. Only about 2.3 million people out of our labor force of about 11 million are registered taxpayers. That in itself should give you a certain sense of you know, those who are really paying the tax are the small proportion. 2.3 of 11 is just about 20%. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So 80% of our labor force who are supposed to be paying tax are not paying tax. That narrow tax base contributes directly to our level of tax revenue. Is that okay? Now, the other thing has to do with our weak VAT, value added tax administration. VAT compliance per the report declined from 30% to 18% between 2015 and 2021. Is that okay? Compliance would mean that those who are supposed to pay tax comply with all the tax administration requirements so that they are able to file their tax and pay their tax and what have you. Now, compliance has a positive relationship with revenue mobilization. Once compliance is weak, then you would notice that the revenue that will be generated from VAT would also decline. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And so that is the real issue. Then the other thing has to do with our tax expenditure. Tax expenditure here would include tax exemptions, particularly the tax exemption in the mining and energy sectors. That component increased significantly. Once you're exempting people and businesses from taxes, you are not going to get it. That is pretty straightforward. And so those are some of the basic reasons why there was a decline in our tax performance, although our GDP was growing.
And I think the narrow tax base conversation is something we've been having here on this platform for a very long time. Isn't it about time that we looked at, widening our tax net?
My brother, this discussion, how do I put it? This discussion is not new. It has been there. Governments have spoken about it over and over. We still live with it. So I don't even know what to say.
What really is a problem?
The problem is that it's not that it is not known. It is known. Maybe to put it differently, they've not really done much about it. Although we know it is a problem. So our problem is knowing there is a problem and not doing anything about it. So it is not like I want us to even discuss the problem of a narrow tax base. No. I want us to discuss the problem of those who can do something about it, knowing there is a narrow tax base, talking about it, yet nothing to show for it.
But isn't that the work of GRA?
Yes, it's the work of GRA, but it must come with some policy. It's the work of GRA to collect taxes. But GRA does not make tax policy.
Okay.
Is that okay?
So then
that comes from somewhere, which you and I know.
Now, you also mentioned a weak VAT administration. Now, and that has got to do with VAT compliance, like you mentioned. And you said that it's declined from 30% to 18% between 2015 and 2021. What are the things that are causing this particular, this decline in the VAT compliance?
And brother, collected revenues as a share of GDP declined from 15.7% in 2017 to 13% in 2021, except for turnover and excise taxes. Collection from all major taxes declined. In particular, the persistent fall in revenue from income taxes and VAT stood in direct contrast with the trends observed in peer countries. See, average tax collections, like I've told you, stood at 13.2% of GDP between 2017 and 2021. 8 percentage points short of the country's estimated tax capacity. Our capacity, even as of 2022, was supposed to be about 21.2% of GDP, and below the sub-Saharan African average, which I mentioned to you earlier, of about, I think 18%.
18%, yeah.
See, reforms to indirect taxes, primarily VAT, it holds a great promise in augmenting Ghana's revenue and have been comprehensively analyzed elsewhere. Is that okay?
Yeah.
It's not like we've not had discussions on what to do with VAT and all of that. We have. But let's look at our VAT system. Let's look at it. I'm sure today if you buy something, one of the things you are going to see, what really is even VAT like? When the tax man says VAT, what is it? Is that okay? And let's look at something happening. It is a consumption tax, value-added tax. It's similar to sales taxes in the United States. And worldwide, over 170 countries use value-added tax. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Now, when you buy something, you know there's a VAT of 15% on what you buy. Is that correct?
Yeah.
There are other things that are also sales tax. I don't really even know what we are doing. You are going to get something that is called COVID-19 levy. It's also increasing the cost of sales, or in other words, the selling price, what you bought. It's increasing the price. Is that okay? And so we have a standard VAT rate. We have other line items that are in themselves, if you like, they are also VAT. Because of this, one of the things I am critically sensing is that, don't you think people will try and run away from that? Yeah, because when the tax burden is too much, people will find another way to get to the thing without going through it. Do you understand the point I'm making?
Yeah.
And that may be contributing to why we are going through this. Is that okay?
Yeah.
It may be contributing to why we are going through this.
And yeah.
I think that it's something we need to pay attention to. Yeah, you were
absolutely. Now, and you also talk about the tax expenditures. You said we exempt, we give tax exemptions, particularly to people or companies in the mining and energy sectors, and that there's an increase in that, and that's also causing us a decline in our tax revenue performance. What could be done about it? Do you think that we should stop giving those tax exemptions, or do the strengths outweigh the weaknesses for giving those tax exemptions?
No, I don't think anybody will be happy with me hearing that I said we should stop giving tax exemptions. Is that okay?
I'm putting you on the spot.
Hello, Raphael, are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Tax exemptions have their role in every economy. Is that okay? So if, for instance, Raphael, you start a business today, we don't need to tax you. Is that correct? Because your business is a new business. It is at its introductory stage of life. Do you understand?
Yeah.
It is when you have grown that we start taxing you. When you are a baby, we help you. We call them, how do you call them? Infant industry, infant firms and all of that. You don't tax them because otherwise you kill them. You see, taxation is both a revenue collection handle and it is also a dividend. Why do I say it's a dividend? You can use taxation to reap future dividends. So businesses that are relatively new and all of that, they are now growing, they don't really have strength, their debts and their liabilities are even more than their incomes and all of that. If you tax them, you are adding on to their liabilities and their burdens. You are going to kill them, and we need businesses to thrive. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So tax exemptions are good for several reasons. Is that okay? It encourages a lot of things. It encourages a lot of things. And so, sorry, you don't need to tax every organization. But the point I was making was to the extent that I don't think some businesses really need to be exempted from tax, especially those that are grown and all of that. Yeah, I don't want to go into specific examples for intentional reasons. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So it's not every, you see, my point really is that the fiscal cost of tax expenditure, which includes tax exemptions, it calls for us to rationalize it while mitigating the negative welfare impact. Because, of course, some of these businesses that are exempted from tax, like NGOs and all of that, NGOs do not pay taxes and all of those things. It is because they provide some social amenities, social benefits to society and all of that. You get it?
Yeah.
Religious organizations and all. I'm not saying we should go and tax churches and all. No. That's not the point I'm making. Because they are playing their role. I'm speaking to the profit-oriented businesses that are exempted from tax. The businesses who have the wherewithal to pay taxes that are not being taxed for some reasons. I don't even want to qualify the reasons, but for some reasons. Those businesses could rope in some good money for us. And so we do not really need to exempt them from that.
Now let's look into that a bit more. How have these tax expenditures impacted government revenue? And I want you to give me some specifics, if you can.
How the expenditure has affected our revenue, right?
Yes.
I said it has grown over the past decade. Is that okay? And so once that is growing, tax expenditure here, we are talking about the exemptions and all of that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And how much it takes you to go and collect taxes and all of that. How much it costs you, to go get taxes and all of that. You see, once that is growing, the direct consequence is that your tax potential is reduced. Your tax revenue potential is reduced because you will not be getting money from those sources. And you're also losing money to collect some taxes. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Now, you see, by 2022, our tax expenditure amounted to 4.2% of GDP. And do you know what was the main driver of that? Tax exemptions. Tax exemptions to businesses in mining, oil and gas sectors. We need to rationalize these exemptions because they could generate additional revenue to support social and infrastructure investment. See, Raphael, it was you that I told just in one of our sessions that our GDP growth was coming from oil revenue. What does that tell you? Isn't it possible that these businesses within the oil and gas sector and mining sector are really the ones who are making the margins? Isn't it possible? It is. It is fact. If these same businesses, some of them are enjoying tax exemption, do you see where I'm taking this to? That is it. So it really has an impact on our tax revenue to the extent that it reduces it. It reduces our tax revenue. Then our potential to be able to even generate more revenue from taxes.
Now, can you compare our revenue performance with countries like Rwanda and Kenya?
Compared to Rwanda and Kenya, our revenue is we are below. Like we are behind them. Is that okay?
Yeah.
We are lagging behind them because of issues on weaker compliance and enforcement mechanisms. For instance, in Rwanda, they implemented an electronic billing machines and simplified tax regimes. And that raised their revenue to GDP, or their tax to GDP ratio, from 14% in 2010 to 18% in 2022. See, I gave you what our tax to GDP ratio was earlier. Is that not so?
Yeah, you did.
I gave you that. Someone is growing from 14 to 18. Meanwhile, what is happening to us? We are falling from 16 to 13. You get it?
Yeah.
That is the real issue.
So what do you think? We should also try to put in place those reforms and some.
So we've identified the issues. What are the issues? Tax compliance, tax expenditure through tax exemptions. We've identified them, right? These are the issues. What do we do? How do we address? How do we mitigate these? Is that okay? Then we are able to solve the issue. You see, Rwanda, they introduced a VAT reform, and that increased their VAT compliance by 40%. We could benefit from similar technological and policy reforms. See, our peers are doing something that is helping them. We can easily adapt it. We can learn from them. There are other tax regimes. I remember the former vice president during one of his campaign trails. In fact, I think it was in their manifesto, where he spoke about changing our tax regime. I think they had understudied Estonia, their tax regime, and then they wanted to implement it. It's not something I've personally looked into, but those are some of the things you have to do. You need to understand what is at stake, which is already known. You need to know if there is any country doing something good or excelling at that, then you get that. I know government has made a lot of efforts to, for instance, expand the base. You know, issues on national identification, digitalization, and what have you are all geared towards addressing that. Because once we can get everyone around a national identification system, then we are able to forecast with precision and certainty that we have this number of taxpayers, they are located here, 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 they do this work, that and that and that. And so we are able to know how to properly tax them, tax their businesses and all of that. I hope you get it. Yeah, but we need to do more. We need to do more. We need to strengthen compliance. We need to bring in some new reforms, new policies that will be able to get taxpayers to comply, to file their taxes. You know, nobody likes paying taxes. I'm sure you remember the popular passage in the Bible. You know, there was a man called Matthew.
Yeah.
Who is known for tax collection.
Yeah.
In fact, at a point, the disciples came to, no, not the disciples. I think there was a conversation around Caesar and God. And it's on tax. Is that okay?
Yeah.
It was on tax. So you can understand that even during Jesus' time, people were not comfortable with paying taxes. Is that okay?
Yeah.
The Pharisees were the ones who were trying to trap Jesus. And he didn't engage them in a debate, but rather he told them that they should give what belongs to Caesar, which is like the tax authority, which is like GRE. So give what belongs to GRE to GRE, and what belongs to God, give it to God. This is not a modern day concept. Nobody really likes paying taxes.
No, I like paying taxes.
No, you are more like a responsible citizen, a patriotic citizen.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
you know what your civic responsibilities are.
I pay all
so
my
you pay your taxes,
Yeah.
but you can't tell me you love paying taxes. I'll call the Commissioner General so that will access you. There are gifts you have received without paying taxes on them. We'll come after you. But that's just on the lighter side. You get it?
Right.
And so you need to create some sort of mechanism that will prevent people from actually refusing to do what they don't like doing. I don't know if you get it.
Yeah.
It is something, it's like maybe in senior high school where you have some friends who do not like bathing, really. The way to help them is to, you know what to do. You get them into the bathhouse, you try and work with them, you encourage them, you move together with them. You see, you need to incentivize the taxpayers for them to be able to pay. You need to create mechanisms that makes it difficult for people to evade taxes. Because tax evasion is a very serious issue. See, there are businesses, there are individuals who are investing heavily in what we call tax planning. You know, tax planning is an issue or it's a phenomenon where the taxpayer minimizes how much they pay as tax. My brother, if you know what to do so that you lessen your tax burden, you know tax planning is not a sin as per the law. It's not, you've not broken any rule. It is tax evasion that is a serious issue.
Right.
But people can plan their tax. Is that okay? And then they will avoid certain taxes. There is tax avoidance and there is tax evasion, and the two are different. Is that okay?
Yeah.
By tax planning, if people know how to get their way around taxes, is that okay? There are legal methods that you use as a taxpayer to minimize the amount of your income or whatever that is taxed. But with tax evasion, it is an illegal practice, and that one, the law will come after you. Where you intentionally, you do not pay your tax, it's illegal.
Right.
But I'm telling you this morning that, Raphael, there are businesses and individuals who are heavily investing in tax planning so that they will reduce their tax liability. We need to create a system where that will not happen.
Right. Ima, let's move away from that. I'm going to come back to it anyway, because I would want us to talk about how we can. I think yesterday we mentioned some of those things, how we can improve our domestic revenue mobilization. But just before that, I see that there were some challenges in personal income tax, value-added tax, and corporate income taxes, according to the report. Can you run us through them? What challenges exist in their collection?
Yes, there were some challenges in our personal income taxes, in our value-added taxes, and our corporate income taxes. The personal income tax is as a result of the high informal sector that we have. Is that okay? 85%, about 80% of our workforce are not paying their personal income taxes. And so that translates directly into how much we are able to raise from personal income tax. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Do you get that?
Yeah.
Good. Now, when we come to VAT issue, you see, so with personal income, the challenge is with the informal sector. Is that okay? When it comes to value-added tax, the challenge is with the poor compliance and then the weak administration issues. Is that okay?
Yeah.
That is really where the challenge lies. So different taxes, different issues. And when it comes to the corporate income tax, these are taxes. So the personal income taxes are like taxes that are paid by individuals on their salaries, earnings, and income. Is that okay? The value-added tax are the consumption taxes. These are taxes that you pay on the goods and services, goods that you buy, services you render. Is that okay? And then the corporate income tax is what is really taxing the net income, or not the net income, but taxing the incomes of organizations. Is that okay? Because net income would mean that we're taking away our tax. But companies' profits, when we tax that is corporate income tax. The issue there is evasion, 1. 2, underreporting of income. Because they know it is their income you are taxing. And so once they underreport their income, how do you tax them? Is that okay? And we know we have a large number of businesses that are SMEs, and you don't even find them to tax them in the first place. So those are the issues around it.
I see. So you talked about the high informality in the workforce, and also the poor compliance and weak administration. That's for VAT, and also the evasion and underreporting. I think it's about time. I'll keep coming back to the fact that we have a lot of work to do as a nation if we really want to be self-reliant, or if we really want to be, what's the word we've been using? The word that President Akufo-Addo introduced, I think it's a phrase.
Ghana beyond
aid. Yes, if you want to be beyond aid, you want to really.
Why President Akufo-Addo is not here? So why are you bringing him here?
Oh no, I'm just trying to remember what he used to say. I mean, if we really want to be beyond aid, essentially, then we must actually be looking inward. And we spoke to Professor Bokpin, your big man, your senior man when it comes to econs. And he said that, and we asked him questions around President Mahama's decision to immediately rule out an extension of the IMF program. You know, when President Mahama was in Munich on Monday, he spoke about that. He said that they weren't going to continue, even though that's an option. His government is presently committed to adhering to the existing program, but they will not focus on going back to the IMF again. So that would mean that we have to look inward if we want to really be up to task when it comes to what we have to do as a nation in terms of our revenue mobilization. And so I think there's a lot of work we have to do, especially when it comes to this taxation. It's a very crucial area that we must pay attention to. And I don't know why any government hasn't been able to really do anything in line with that. But maybe that's a conversation.
Raphael, it's not easy. We are talking.
What are they?
We hold every other thing equal, and we talk. But in real governance and administration, you can't hold every other thing equal.
So what are the issues? Why is it difficult?
We're talking about the issues. You are dealing with Ghanaian people. After you, the tax man, you are planning on how to go about your work. So it's also a business also looking at how to dribble you.
But regardless, we should still be able to do what we have to do.
Oh, I agree. But I'm only saying that it's not easy. It's not a walk in the park. It's not so easy to do.
I see.
Yeah, it comes with some work, and I agree with you. A lot of work. If you want to get it from within. We must note that there are a lot of factors that may be contributing to this. There is this popular conversation or, I don't know, perception I find among Ghanaians. A lot of people don't want to pay taxes because they say that the taxes they have been paying, what have they been using it for?
Right.
I don't know if it's something you personally
heard before. I think we've even mentioned that here before.
That in itself affects compliance because the person does not see any use of their taxes. When people start hearing issues around corruption and the rest of them, why would they want to pay taxes? You understand?
Yeah.
So that is what I'm saying. It's not easy because we need, for us to do that, we need to rally the Ghanaian people around that big vision or big idea. That is one. Two, we need them to have trust in our public systems, or as it were, in the GRA, in government and all of that. They must trust that, this tax, I'm supposed to pay for this and all of that. Another issue has to do with tax education. How many people really have been educated properly on tax, on taxation? Do you get the point?
Yeah, I get it.
So a lot has to be done in terms of some work on the, you have to bring the minds of the people, some psychological work, some educational work, and all of that. And then the issue of policy, digital, you see the tax, I don't know if I should call it, the whole taxation work. Once you have a lot of people in that chain, you may not get all the money you are supposed to get.
Right.
But once you limit the people in the chain and you digitalize the process, you can get more. The Estonia issue is an issue of digitalization. So you need a policy that is digital focused and has a way of automating the tax payment process. See, someone should not suffer, go through stress to pay taxes, go through stress to file their tax returns. When that happens, they will not go the next month or the next year.
Well,
do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
If I have to go to DRA office at Okonglo here and have to go and queue for 2 hours before I'm able to file my tax returns, then I've not been incentivized enough to be filing my tax returns. Is that okay?
Yeah.
You need to create a system where people easily can pay their taxes. There is this theory that will support this. We call it the technology acceptance model.
Yeah, Tom.
Which is telling us perceived ease of use of the technology is an important thing we need to as it were, look at. In developing that framework, you need to look at the perceived ease of use.
Right.
And then you need to look at the perceived usefulness of that, because that would affect our attitude towards taxation. And in the long run, it will affect our behavioral intention. Is that okay?
Yeah.
For us to accept the new policy you would bring on board, that is going to be technologically driven, or it's a digitalized infrastructure, or whatever you call it. Is that okay? Or a new technology, a new way of doing it. You need to consider carefully the perceived usefulness of it,
right,
and the perceived ease of use. And that, I'm saying, that will go a long way to affecting our attitude towards using it. Is that okay? Which would also impact our behavioral intention to use it. And that will, in the long run, seep into the relevance of that system that is brought on board.
Right.
Yeah.
Ima, I think we'll wrap up here this morning. I'd wanted us to talk about how we can, but I think that's something we've highlighted as and when we're going through the conversation, and also probably maybe some of the lessons that we could learn from international experience. But I think you've also mentioned the Rwanda case and that of Kenya as well. So we can pick a few things from there. But thank you very much for joining me this morning for Market Trends. I'm grateful.
You're welcome.
Please enjoy the rest of your day. Well, if you just tuned in, this Business Breakfast on Zed 101.9 FM with me, Nitrebi Hammond. We just finished a conversation with our economic analyst, Emmanuel Boateng, and he's made us understand a few things in line with how Ghana can generate revenue and also be able to do certain things that we ought to do, or we must do as a nation. We're going to get into our roundtable discussion at this point, but just before that, we'll take a quick music break. When we return, my guests are already in studio, and I have two more joining me over Zoom for us to talk about internal controls in business. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Yeah. You're welcome to the world of viral ski.
Classic. Kojo. Cute. Come on. Call me. Order say I say, can you get me the menu what to go do? What's the attack, Goma? The Argentina metambo how bomobo. Say I say, can you get me the menu what to go do? What's the attack, Goma? The Argentina metambo how bomobo. So dog in a passe, one number mama, one number mambo, passe one number mama. Forgetting a time for Casacramente, passe one number mamate, one number mambo, passe one number mamate, forgetting a time for Casacramente. Mohima, my boat time ya chepa, some bets na head chesa, hey, when you say when you're fresher, first year like I for push na me transfer. But my born hopper, when they hear me, then ye be a man young hodo. Beshamin who said that boat, I'm a choke, Yamanyami Budo, brow ball for fro. Missy, when you say one watch, me me gallery, me so me salary, no. Metias Yama watch, one bow, do better we move to Capayana Mimu. Mr. Wa, my yet wow, Yao Sapo, my phone, and now pen cry. Number Nidia, and what's a midget, me far by you ain't country missing. Now on your midday missing. Passe one number, mama, one number, mambo, passe one number, mama, forgetting a time for Casacramente, passe one number, mama, one number, mambo, passe one number, mama, forgetting a time for Casacramente. But yes, your mammy, Nasa baby, be one, yes, so if I was a me, mammy, did you say me, what ya baby? Oh, but yes, your mammy, Nasa baby, be one, yes, so if I was a me, mammy, did you say me, what ya baby? So, dog in a pass, one number, mama, one number, mama.
Lurcher, and Business Radio.
Me senior one, share with them up at a senior man. Mommy crib. Miss Rewa, my yeah wow. Kuma, my phone and a pen cry. And I'm banid yet, and what's a midget? Me far by you ain't got your missing. Now when you made it, listen.
Pass it, one number, mama.
Pass it.
One number, mama. Pass it, one number, mama. Forgetting I don't focus, I come into It's DJ Vereski.
It's your lifestyle, Lurcher, and Business Radio.
Zed 101.9 FM.
Opposite natural. Imana chukwa gazitomo. Onyelo me you me. What am I looking for? Say my God, it don't mess me. They giving me you, giving you me. Opposite key fell like just son. Opposite key fell me just me. My baby, you know say you got love for me. I do go. When I call your name, you shakara for me. No, I'm gonna be your you gon' be my Julie. No, I'm gonna be your you gon' be my Julie. Give me your heart, I'm not gonna run away. Show me your love, I don't go use you play. Carry me, go me, I go follow away. Follow you, oh. Me and you. Okwamona, give my baby. Me and you. Okwamona, give my baby. Opposite give and I just said so. Opposite give and me just say me. My baby, you know say you got love for me. I do go. When I call your name, shakara for me. No, I'm gonna be your you gon' be my Julie. No, I'm gonna be your you gon' be my Julie.
Lifestyle, Leisure, and Business Radio.
Zed 101.9 FM.
Opposite key fell like just son. Opposite key fell me just me. My baby, you know say you got love for me. I do go. When I call your name, you shakara for me. I'm gonna be your you gon' be my Julie. No, I'm gonna be your you gon' be my Julie. Give me your heart, I'm not gonna run away. Show me your love, I'm not gonna Opposite fella just so. Opposite family just me. My baby, you know say you got love for me. I do go. When I call your name, shakara for me. No, I go be your, you gon' be my Julie. No, I go be your, you gon' be my Julie.
It's your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio.
I go be your, you gon' be my Julie.
It's your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio.
Well, 13 to 9 here on the Business Breakfast on Zed. Welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us. It's time for us to have a roundtable discussion, and today we're going to talk about a very important subject. I have a very high-level panel seated, ready to help us understand a few things and also help us to strengthen our internal controls at the workplace. Now, the topic we're talking about today, or we're going to discuss, is strengthening internal controls at the workplace. Now, internal controls are the backbone of any organizational, any organization's financial and operational stability. Now, when properly implemented, they minimize risks related to fraud, theft, mismanagement, and cyber threats. Now, with the increasing complexity of workplace structures and digital transactions, organizations must adopt stronger internal control systems to safeguard assets and ensure compliance with industry standards. Now, on our roundtable discussion today, we'll be exploring how businesses can enhance their internal control frameworks, balance security with employee trust, and leverage technology to improve transparency and efficiency. We have, as I mentioned, an incredible panel of experts who will share their insights on this critical issue. So joining me in studio is Omampenyin Osei Kufuor, a chartered accountant and an adjunct lecturer and an auditor. Opinion?
Yes, boss.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much.
Right. Also with him in studio is Anastasia Georginam, Afiyo Fiatonu, an accounting consultant. And also joining me over Zoom is Na Amele Kofi, and a human resource executive, and Richard Kumado, a fraud prevention expert and a security consultant. These are the gentlemen and ladies, or ladies and gentlemen, who are going to help me have this discussion, just so that the feminists won't come for me. Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome one more time.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Great too. Maybe I should check whether those online can hear me. Hello, Na Ameli, please, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear too. You're very much welcome.
Thank you.
Well, let's dive into the conversation. Now, maybe we can start from understanding internal controls. How would you define strong internal controls in a modern workplace? And I'll start with you, Omampenyin Osei Kufuor.
Okay, thank you very much, and special greetings to you. Thank you very much, and special greetings to your viewers and listeners across. Basically, internal controls, as you said, by way of definition, is the backbone of every organization. Right. I always say that accountants are from God. basically accountants are from God. And if
why do you say that?
The reason is that it's only cause that will be treated in heaven, because you are going to account to God. If you are, all issues are correct, okay, you go to heaven.
Right.
Otherwise, you go to hell. So basically, if internal control systems are not tightened in terms of operations, it becomes a problem. Because I always say that a company can do collapse if internal controls are not checked. And with the accountants, we only check the figures coming in.
Right.
The figures coming in. And there is more to the figures that comes in. Because you can bear with me that profit is not cash.
Right.
Right. So internal controls are simply the mechanisms that we put in place to make sure that an organization can smoothly work. Thank you.
To make sure that an organization can smoothly work. Okay. I want to believe that it's the same thing for everybody.
Yes.
Yeah, it's essentially what it is. Now, what happens when organizations ignore internal control measures? Anastasia.
Okay, so when organizations try to ignore these measures, it brings a lot of things. For instance, fraud. Yes. So we have fraud in many ways. Financial statement fraud, misappropriation, bribery, corruption, procurement fraud. So all these internal controls needs to be put in place to prevent these kind of frauds, because if these frauds go a long way, it comes to affect the organizations in a very bad way. Yes.
Right, let me go to Nameli. Now, what happens? What other things would you say will happen when organizations ignore internal control measures?
Okay, so one of the things we consider is that you have anarchy, right? So when I talk about anarchy, so remember an organization is, for example, a whole nation on its own. You have different people, etc. Now, if you ignore the internal controls and people start taking certain actions, right? Because you have ignored the controls, you are not able to bring back order. Because when one person does it, there are no repercussions. Other people will follow suit. So you get to a point where the company will likely break down and may no longer exist because there have been so many things working against it.
I see. I think Omanpenyi has something to say in addition to that.
Basically, internal controls, we can't forgo internal controls. We are coming from the auditing backgrounds. Okay, we have a lot of issues when it comes to internal control system, which some of the companies just overlook them because they think that the human beings that are manning the activities, they are family members, they are friends, and we do trust them so much in the sense that we just overlook some of the internal control systems. Okay, because they are manning the activities of the organization. And since we have better trust in them, we don't seem it expedient to look at all these internal controls issues when it comes to we trying to manage the activities of the organization.
All right, let me go to Mr. Richard Kumado. Sir, good morning. Hello, sir. Hello. All right, I'm sure we'll get him over the call and then. Right, now let's continue. Now, I know that when we avoid or when we ignore internal controls, there can be a very huge problem. So you mentioned fraud. Now Meli also mentioned anarchy. Now, are there instances where we put too many controls in place in an organization? Omanpenyi.
Okay. What makes too much controls? Control is control, irrespective. Okay. Unless we that we are working in the organization, okay, we are not complying with the controls being put in place. The controls do not become so much.
No, but you see, there are instances where there's flexibility in the company, decisions are being made, everybody can share their mind and all of that. But there are also instances where there are too many controls in place, so much so that when people are working, they are even checking their back, even if there's nothing that they are doing wrong. So that's what I'm talking about. Or can there be instances like that?
For me, I don't side with you that there's too much controls, because it's human attitude, right? Because if you know that you are doing the right thing, why are you just walking around thinking that something will go wrong? So basically, it's the human attitude. When it comes to internal controls, these people develop some activities, because we are coming from academia. So basically, the first one is control environment. How those at the top, how they think, their philosophy, their attitude. So let's say I come here and the general manager is behaving anyhow, I also follow suit.
Right.
But if I do come and the general manager composed, controls are working, I also follow suit. So basically, controls do not become too much unless you, the person, your attitude do not sit well with the organization. So basically, you just leave.
All right.
Okay.
Now, Melly, do you agree?
Yeah. So remember that controls are put in place in response to risks, right? In any risk management process, you first assess what your challenges are, what is likely to bring the company down before you put the mitigations in place in terms of internal controls, right? Now, I think what you are referring to is not so much internal controls, but in terms of rules, right? So rules, yes, are part of internal controls, but you can over-regulate a system, but it is very difficult to put in too much internal controls, because the internal controls are a direct response to the risks you are faced with, unless you didn't do a risk assessment. Okay. When I say you can overregulate, it happens where the company is responding to triggers that have not even been assessed. So they just say, oh, it's possible that we might be losing data. Then they put in place a data protection policy. Then somebody will come and say, oh, but I think that policy is not affecting everything. Then you put in, let's say, an information security policy. Then somebody will say, oh, but it doesn't cover, let's say, people who walk in and come and take newspapers away. Then they put in another policy, right? So then you will have an environment where you are not properly assessing whether even the first control you put in place is taking care of all your other risks. So you are just adding on. Okay. Now, when you do that, it's not so much over that you put in too much controls, but you will get to a point where the whole organization will become stiff, right? And remember, when you have a very stiff environment, your innovation levels go down. Okay, which doesn't really augur well for the whole system. But internal controls are there to make your life better. They are not there to restrict you from doing your job. They are there to help you do your job excellently. Okay, so it's very difficult to put in too much internal controls.
But of course there are some organizations that have that in place, and I'm sure it negatively impacts the business, like you mentioned. It can affect, it can actually create that stiffness in the organization. So maybe somebody's listening to us and they are a business owner or something, then they probably might think through very deep about about putting in certain controls. And like you mentioned, every risk, every control must come on the back of a risk assessment, isn't it? Hello, Na?
Yes, that's the best way to go, because when you assess the risk and you put in the controls, you go back and assess whether the controls are actually mitigating the risk. Because for most organizations, we have what we call risk appetites, right? And that is your conscious decision to accept a particular risk or mitigate it.
Right.
And a lot of, especially for fraud, okay, most organizations have zero risk appetite for fraud. Okay. And so when you put in internal controls for fraud, you will normally consider all the options, and also things will arise that you had not thought about. So that also becomes a risk, and you go back and put in a control to mitigate that new risk. Okay. Especially because businesses evolve. So if, for instance, previously you were not accepting mobile money as a business and you were only accepting, let's say, bank transfers, right, which have their own risk, but you've mitigated that by access control, how many people can access your bank account, how many people can transfer funds, etc. Then you say, okay, now we are accepting Momo. You will then have to put in place internal controls that manage your Momo receipts and transfers, because they come also with their own risks.
Right.
You understand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for those thoughts. Let me come to Omampeni before I come to you, Anastasia. Now, Omampeni, I want you to tell me in what ways, I want you to be very specific and elaborate as well. In what ways can internal controls improve the overall business efficiency?
Okay, basically, as you said, we're supposed to be specific. Internal controls is the backbone of every organization. So if internal controls are well placed, internal controls are well followed, as Now was saying, that internal controls, when you do your risk assessment and other issues, and you know that do you love risk or you don't like risk at all, so you are just running away from risk, it will improve profitability. The first thing, profit will increase. I said earlier on that profit is not cash, but profitabilities are the things that those investors also look at, okay, before they will do invest in the organization. Liquidity issues will be solved because theft issues will be controlled. People will not be stealing. We that we are coming from accounting background, basically when you talk about fraud, it's about money missing. Okay, you are not talking about anything. Fraud is about money missing. So basically, if internal controls are tightened, theft issues will be away, and liquidity, in terms of liquid money that we are going to use to run the organizations, will be intact. Secondly, people will be disciplined. Okay, I told you that after the books, after the figures coming in, the behavior of people can also collapse the organization. Believe me, that we have two types of employees, internal and external. The internal are the two customers, rather, sorry. The internal customer and the external customer. The internal customer is that the employees. So if the employees, basically, their attitude are right, it will translate into figures.
Right.
It can also collapse the business at the long run. So if internal controls are well placed, followed, complied with, revenue will increase, market share in terms of we taking domain of the market will also increase, liquidity issues will be solved, in terms of we getting credibility for investors to come and also invest in a company can be enhanced. So internal control is of essence.
Right, internal control is of essence. Right, now let's continue the conversation. We're still trying to understand what exactly the internal controls are and what they are about. I have joining me now, connected over the phone lines, Mr. Richard Kumado, who is a cyber security expert. Sir, good morning.
Morning.
Thank you very much for making time to be here.
Go ahead, please.
Right. Okay, so we've been talking about internal controls. We've tried to define it. We've also spoken about what happens when organizations ignore internal controls. And we've looked about the importance, how it improves business efficiency. Now, because you are a security expert, I want you to tell us what industries are at the highest risk of fraud due to weak internal controls.
It depends on the risk assessment you are doing, and I have dealt with fraud-related issues in the financial sector. In fact, I train almost all of them between the central bank when it comes to issues of fraud, cybersecurity breaches, and money laundering and financial crime and card fraud. I overheard my big brother in the studio talking about some of them, and he was stressing on the customer-centric side of it and account-centric, and how when compliance is achieved, which internal control is one of them, it can help the business. And so when we talk about vulnerabilities and you are looking at fraud as an operational risk, it depends on what you are looking at. Within the financial sector, what we have done is to risk rank the financial institutions, the bank. So we have categories A, categories B, and categories C and D. And we can tell you exactly what the likelihood fraud are. I set up something called fraud alert. So everywhere fraud occurs in this country and in some other parts of the world, it comes to my desk. And so that is for the financial sector. And now when you are talking about the telcos and you are talking about fintech, it's also a different category because they provide different sets of services. and the vulnerabilities or the associated vulnerabilities that come with the services will also differ. Then you are talking about government agencies and units, and you are talking about the mining sector. So, irrespective of whenever you look at, then that will determine what the fraud elements are or what the vulnerabilities are likely to appear.
So essentially, it cuts across almost every sector.
Yeah, definitely. It depends on what you want to pick as a key pointer when you are talking about operational risks, for which fraud is then. Fraud is one of them. Or you are looking at fraud itself and the implications it has on business and business profitability and sustainability.
Just to help our listeners, you said fraud itself. Can you what exactly is fraud? Maybe
so when we are talking about fraud, it's basic. Let me define it for you. For the 29 years I've been in the industry, let me use it to define it for you and for your listeners to understand. When you take a particular bank or you take any business at all, the products and services they put out there, which they expect people to access it, and which become part of their business model. All the products and services have policies that governs how they should be administered. What a policy does is that it does two things. It outlines the procedure and it defines the processes. Anytime the procedure is circumvented and the process is contravened, you create vulnerability that can be exploited by people within or in collaboration with people outside. So we say fraud is said to be committed anytime a procedure has been circumvented and the process is contravened to give an advantage to people with capacity to exploit the vulnerabilities that has been created. That is fraud. What happened in a typical financial institution is that when fraud occurs, nobody seems to see it until somebody put his hand and collects money. Or internal threat occur, like insider trading and many of those things occur, or a major procedural regime has been overlooked and some people came in to do ABCD. But when we do the investigations, anytime we do investigations and trace it back, you could see that the fraud occurred long time ago, and it's either the business operations or head office supervision did not see. And it traveled deep down there to the tail at the point where there has been a financial loss or a material loss. So when we are defining fraud to the basic level, we said that all products and services have policies that govern them, and the policies outline the processes and define the procedure. Remember, you will create vulnerability or you'll be eligible by creating fraud anytime the procedure is circumvented and the processes are contravened. And if you understand it that level, then you will understand why internal control will always be interested in the procedure and the compliance officers will always be interested in the processes. Because the procedure alone do not tell you which fraud has occurred and which one is likely to occur if you strike it to only internal control. And that is why we even said in the case of the national service vulnerabilities that has been exploited, you will want to look at the processes, and the processes tell you the integrity or the line-by-line aspect of which vulnerability has been exploited. And if you take only the procedure which deals directly with internal control, you may miss some of the lines. And that is why in businesses, particularly when due sums materials have been lost, you do what we call fraud audit and system audit, and you review the management decision, and you define.
Right. Thank you for that free education.
Well, I'm sending you an invoice,
Right. Now let me come back in studio. Thank you very much for that. Please stay on for us. Let me come back in studio and come to Anastasia. Now, Anastasia, you are into accounting, and I know one of the very important controls that businesses must put in place is financial controls.
Yes.
And connecting that to fraud prevention. Now, how do weak financial controls contribute to workplace fraud and mismanagement?
Okay, so when certain controls are not put in place for the financial controls, like sometimes segregation of duties, like before you sign a check, you are supposed to follow certain proceedings. When all those things are ignored, it finds a way of going against the internal controls of the institutions. So everything needs to be put in place. And most of the times we make use of the internal auditors. Without them, sometimes internal controls cannot really be put in place. But here lies the case, sometimes managers don't tend to take the advice of these internal auditors because they feel like, oh, we are all workers. So they just brush away their advices that they give. But sometimes they just have to calm down and listen to these internal auditors, their advices, so that it can help control whatever financial fraud that is being put in place. And even sometimes with the segregation of duties, some people find a way of forming a syndicate. Like even with the process of signing checks and the rest, maybe they are all one. So you, for instance, before I come to you to sign a check, I'll make you know that, oh, I want to add 1 0 to it. I'll tell Omanpeni to, I want to add another 0 to it. So before you know it, like those people who are supposed to put in place these internal controls to make sure that these financial transactions take in place, they have already formed a syndicate. So sometimes in order to prevent these things, you need to have a neutral person in between them to be able to check these transactions so that they can come back and report to you that, hey, I saw this, I saw that, it's not going on well. So try and check certain things. Thank you.
Right. And that so that actually affects the organizations.
Yes, it affects the organizations financially. Because you can imagine like your revenue, you already have a capital put in place, you know that you are making this profit at the end of the day, and your expenses keep on reducing, you don't even understand, which comes down to affect your taxes. Like it affects everything in the organization at the long run. Yes.
Right. Now, what financial safeguards do you think that companies, or would you say companies, should put in place to prevent theft?
I think they should do away with the cash system now. Right now, we have mobile money, we have bank transactions, so that you'll be able to keep records of everything. Even funny enough, sometimes even if you try to do away with these things, I remember there was this case I found out later. There was this guy who was in charge of the checkbooks. So you know the checkbooks has these numbers, this serial numbers. So what he did was that he always tries to write more than necessary. So once he wrote 1,000 like 3 times in the check, then he tore it. So when he was tearing it, he has a way of tearing it deep within. So you are not even able to detect that this check has been torn off it. Yes. So when he's going to withdraw the check, he withdraws it at a go. So the control put in place in these organizations, the boss already has an alert on his phone. Okay. So the boss gets an alert, maybe check number 001, 002, 003. Maybe the time he goes to withdraw this, the boss is maybe at a program. So he might feel like, oh, this is a mistake from the bank or something. So these are some of the things that sometimes some of the employees try to find their way in, let me use the word, stealing from the organization. Right. Apart from adding zeros to the checks, they try to find ways and means of taking money. So when you use the mobile money, at least the mobile money is able to print out statements for you at the end of the day. You are supposed to do your financial analysis, check in the statement and everything. So all these things can prevent.
So one of the safeguards is that they should move away from the they should move towards a cashless system.
Yes, the cashless
in running
system.
their businesses. Okay, yes. That's fine. Let me ask Omanpeni. Omanpeni, do you have any to add to that?
Yes. As I said earlier on, controls is key. So the measures, I think that the organization is supposed to put in place. The first issue, I'll use this acronym. We call it SOSPAM. Okay.
What?
SOSPAM.
SOSPAM.
Yes.
Okay.
So the first S talks about segregation of duty.
Okay.
Practically, you don't anticipate someone who is collecting revenue supposed to bank same. So for instance, Anas is collecting the revenue. If Anas is banking, who is checking Anas?
Right.
Anas can bank lesser than the amount collected. So there should be a clear segregation of duty. The person collecting supposed not to be the same person paying. It goes beyond human, though. Okay. You will find infractions in there, but if this measure is being put in place, the person collecting supposed not to bank, so that there will be a check on the person collecting. I collected 500. This person banked 500. So if the person come back and say that, hey, you banked 450, I said I gave you 500. We have signed it off, and you know. So same supposed to be banked. Then the O talks about organizational structure. The way the organization has structured the organogram. Who is in charge of the cash? Who is in charge of accounts? Who is in charge of this? So that we don't cross each other in terms of anything done. Then controls will be put in place. Your activity ends here. The next one talks about authorization and approval.
Okay.
There should be someone authorizing that we're supposed to bank. Someone also authorizing that we're supposed to spend. There should be a clear distinction between someone authorizing and someone approving in terms of all these activities. The next one is fiscal control. Okay. Whilst you are here, you have embossed some of your assets. If assets are not, it's also a form of control. If assets are not embossed, we don't write on the asset. Human beings are close to God, and we also come from God. You get it? You'll be seeing some of the asset in the house, giving some to our children to send to school and other stuff. So assets supposed to be embossed well, getting asset register, where we register all the assets in the books, and we know that if this asset is obsolete, we take it out. The next one talks about supervision. Who is supervising who in terms of the organization? If internal controls are not well placed and no one is supervising anyone, human beings, we like freedom. And the space that we find ourselves, Africa, we like freedom. Everyone wants to be boss man over each other. But if we have supervisors over other activities, okay, even in heaven, Angel Michael was there to supervise other angels. So order supposed to be in place. The next one talks about I've talked about the SOAP. I've talked about the next P. Also talk about personnel training. Okay, we're supposed to also train them. So in an organization, make sure that the people in there supposed to be trained. The more that you come close to education, the mindset sometimes changes. Okay, not into totality, but the mindset sometimes changes when we apprehend to the things that we have done in school and other stuff. So at every point in time, human beings supposed to be trained in terms of ethical issues. Okay, so that internal controls issues can be adhered to. The next one is arithmetic and accuracy. When any documentation is being brought to you as an accountant, as an auditor, don't just slide.
Okay.
Make sure that mathematically issues tally up before we pay.
Right.
Okay, I have a lot of issues on me, so let it slide. No. And the last one talks about management control, the M. How do management also posture themselves when it comes to every fraud that will happen, and it involves management. I told you that in my earlier submission that in accounting we don't look at any fraud. The fraud that we look at is money missing or misappropriation of asset, and you doing that is a form of money missing in the workplace. So how do manage also perceive internal control system? So if all this being put together, okay, I think the organization will be at a better place.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe I should just run through them just for the sake of those who are listening and probably might have missed it. So SOAP spam, that's the approach you are suggesting. So segregation of duties, organization, authorization, physical control, supervision or supervisory, personnel, access and management, isn't it? Thank you very much for that. Now let's move on. I'm going to go back to our cybersecurity expert, Mr. Komado. Sir, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I want us to go through a few things. Now, what are the biggest cybersecurity risks that compromise internal controls?
Okay, so every system you see, every operational system has inherited vulnerabilities that comes with it. So that is number one. Then number two, you could have deliberate human error. And as a result, my brother spoke about some aspect of it, you need to have a dual control where there should be delegation of authority, but then there should also be feedback as a check to making sure that we are on the same page.
Right.
You could also have management overriding all the system protocol and allowing inappropriate activities to take place or breaching the procedure for whatever it is that is supposed to be done properly. Then you could also have hackers. It depends on the operational system you are using again, and it depends on the industry you find yourself in. Are you dealing with card? My sister was talking about cashless economy. Is it card? And which of the card institutions? Is it Visa? Is it MasterCard? Is it JIPS? Is it JIPS you are talking about? It depends. So there are vulnerabilities inherited in every system you use, but it depends on which one you are using. For pure accountant, is it Sage or is it many of those ones they want to have on the market? So it depends really on which one you are talking about and the vulnerabilities that come with it. And that is also why it's important that in the days where cyber criminals have built capacity, it's important that industries or businesses that depend largely on online businesses, their cyber security architecture would need to be updated and not obsolete. You may have problems with that.
Right. Well, 22 after 9. This is Business Breakfast on Zed with me, Nitrebi Hammond. And this morning we're having a conversation on how to strengthen your internal controls as a business or as an organization. And I have in studio with me Omampeni Osekufo, who is an auditor and a lecturer, and also Anastasia, they said him, forgive me. So Anastasia, who is also an accounting consultant. And then I have over the phone lines Mr. Richard Kumado, who is a cybersecurity expert, and then Na Meli Kofi, who is an HR executive. And all of these individuals are helping us discuss the subject matter. Now, you can join a conversation on our WhatsApp line. You can send your questions, your comments on 0544321019, 0544321019, or you can as well call us on 03039566641, 03039566641. And then you can check us on our social media platforms. We are streaming live on Facebook and on YouTube. On Facebook, we are ZFMGH on Facebook, and then on YouTube we are Z Multimedia. Feel free to get in touch with us, and then we'll do well to answer your questions if you have any. Now let me come back to you, Mr. Kumado. Let me come back to you. Now, how do insider threats impact a company's security framework?
It depends on what their target mission is, and it depends on the objective of their external collaborators, or what is motivating the insiders to trade. Because if they decide to steal a major strategy, then it gives advantage to your competitors, and that may even lead to the collapse of your business. They may not only steal sensitive documents and trade with it, but they could also be reporting you to the regulator for some of the dealings that you have cut them loose or you overlook them. And so it depends on what the objectives are and what is motivating them to do what they are doing. Other than that, it's a major crime against organizations. And even though background checks is important, continuous assessment and motivation is key. My brother spoke about segregation of duty, and I added a dual control and delegation of authority. Once people stay at a particular place on duty for 3 years and above, they are likely to be prone to fraudulent activities, either by themselves or people approaching them for many of those things. So that is the importance of segregation of duty and moving people along. And I think the HR professor in the studio may talk more about that.
Exactly.
But it depends on what is motivating them. But following fraudsters for over 20 years, once people stay at a particular place for more than 3 years, the likelihood that they might be prone to fraudulent activities which may directly involve selling details or some strategic missions or whatever it is high. For we as investigators as well, when we are looking for investigative materials evidence, we look out for such people as well and recruit them as assets or sources, and it makes life easier for everybody.
I see. Now let me thank you very much for that. Let me come to Nameli. Oh, you want to say something? Let me go to Nameli, then I come to you. Now, hello, Nameli. Okay, now let me just come to you whilst we try to get.
Okay, to add to what he said concerning insiders giving out a lot of information. Now, most of we, the young ones, we are trying to learn, be too much innovative. So we try to click on anything online we see. So many a times you see in certain organizations, it will come to a time someone has hacked into their email. It has happened in a lot of instances in various organizations. So when these things happen, these young ones, IT gurus, let me use that way, they are trying to click onto anything they see. They are trying to hack other organizations. It's sort of like a competition now. They try to see whether maybe they can hack into this system. So they open chances also for hackers who also come in to find a way into the organization's email, get the data. You know, now data is very expensive. Get into the data, get into all the informations they need. So sometimes it's the employees are the ones who gives out those informations.
Right. Thank you very much for those thoughts. I'm trying to get Nameli to also share her thoughts because she's into HR. Maybe she will be able to speak to that subject matter a bit more. But let me come back to Mr. Commando one more time. Now, a lot of companies still fall to phishing attacks, despite security awareness trainings that go on in these companies. What do you think is a reason behind that?
Okay, so when you talk about phishing, it has a cousin. We call it smoothing. And so they work together, and it depends on the motivation of the cyber criminals who want to attack your system, and whether they are designing those programs using social media engineering or social engineering per se, whether they are ethical hackers or unethical hackers, or somebody sitting somewhere who want to play with your system. It all depends on their motivation. Some could be to deny service and shut down your system completely. Some may be to attack your computers and your operational system, and some may be to just steal vital documentation and ask for ransom. So it depends. It really depends on what the target is. If your business is around a very competitive area, or you are dealing with a high-intensity crime area where crime is predominant and the tendency of that happening to you is high, then you can understand that they might be doing it for profit-making purposes, because that has also become their business, and that is what they drive on.
Right. Now, I think I have Nameli over the phone lines now. And I'm sorry we lost you for a few minutes. Now, I was asking that how do insider threats impact a company's security framework? And Mr. Commando made some points in line with that. Maybe you can add your voice to that and we move on.
Okay, so you recall that Omampei spoke about segregation of duties and access control and all of that. Now, those are to make sure that the collaboration between insiders to defraud the company is often reduced. However, it's not always the case that you get everything working perfectly, because being human, we often find where the loopholes are and we try to jump through them. Okay, so I'll give you an example. So I work in software development mainly. So let's assume you are working on a product, okay, and your access is given to a junior engineer for a period to work on a specific part of the source code. Okay. If this person, during their time where they are supposed to work on a specific part, overreaches their access, okay, and inputs even one line of code that allows, for instance, the product to be able to do certain things that they were not supposed to do. So Mr. Kumado was talking about how the technology can be used to steal, right? So let's assume that the product they are building is going to collect money, okay? So they create, let's say, a line in the code that splits the money when it comes, and it puts it in different accounts. So for a period till there's an audit, right, you will not be able to track exactly, because when the person on the interface who's tracking sees the money coming, but they are not realizing that the code is actually written in such a way that it's splitting the money. So one of the key internal controls to have when you have that kind of system is a fraud alert system, like Mr. Kumado was talking about, where when it hits, as soon as it hits the account and the amount that hits is not what was expected, it sends an alert to maybe the accountant or the person who's tracking the business.
Right.
Okay. So that you don't get to the end of the month before you realize that about 1 million of your money has been siphoned into another account. Okay. Now, these things are easy to do because when the person who gave the engineer access is in on the game. Okay. So the two of them have agreed that if you are able to write this code, when the money hits the account, you will split it. Okay. So instead of, let's say, giving the engineer access for 1 hour, they give them, let's say, 12-hour access. And I mean, 12-hour access is a lot of time to do all sorts of things. And then they also give them access to the part of the code that has the data, let's say, on accounts, which they are not supposed to do. Okay, so insider action is very troublesome, unless you have an independent person who is also getting alerts about who has accessed the system and what they are doing. Okay, so then they can come back quickly and query, why is the person spending so much time on the code? And how is it that if they are only, let's say, fixing a bug, they are spending this much time in the system? Okay, so it's a very deliberate effort. When you put in the control, you also have to put in the monitoring.
Okay.
So if you just put in the control and nobody's monitoring, you can have a lot of insider interference that will make you lose money you are not supposed to lose.
Right. Well, still on the same subject matter, before I come in studio, how can organizations balance data security with employee access needs?
So you limit access to only what the person needs for their work. And every time they need more access, right? So typically in control systems for access control, you have a designated super user for a particular function. Okay, so let's say you have SAP and your junior accountant, you have, let's say, one who's only doing data entry and your balances, right? And you have a more senior accountant who is actually monitoring the budget, and when the balances are entered into your system or somebody procurement requests something, before they pay, they check balance versus what you are requesting. Is it doable? Do we have the cash? Okay, so you have levels of check. It's not that any accountant can go into your system and authorize a payment. Okay, you have levels of control, and that is how normally organizations are able to check. Because if you say every accountant can, let's say, approve a petty cash transaction, okay, it doesn't work that way. That's why we have mandates. So you say maybe the junior accountant can request. So admin will request the procurement that has to be done. The junior accountant will review the request to see if it's in line with budget, etc., etc. And then you will go to a senior accountant who will approve it before it goes to the person who actually approves the payments in the bank app. So it's levels of checks. It's not one person came and said, I need 1 million, and then boom, it's transferred.
All right. Now, before I come to the studio, because I have a few questions for you. Now, how can companies build a culture where employees report unethical behavior? And I ask this because a lot of organizations struggle with employees reporting certain things that go wrong. So how can companies do that? Okay, so there are different ways. In the first place, you have, when you're hiring, it all starts from when you're hiring, right? When you're hiring, you have to look out for the employees' values.
you are not just looking at their qualifications on paper, right?
Okay.
So one of the things you look at is what are the organization's values? Are they aligned with the employee you are hiring's values? Because if you hire somebody whose values are not aligned, they'll come in and they'll do stuff that is definitely not aligned to what you want to do.
Right.
Okay, so that's one. Then two, after they are hired, you have to do a lot of, I call it conscientization, right? You have to repeatedly repeat the rules. You have to put in place a system that makes it difficult to break the rules. Because human beings I remember one person saying at the beginning that human beings like freedom. Okay, so we often do not like following rules. And so you have to apply both the carrot and the stick to make sure that people are actually either following the rules willingly or are following the rules because they do not want to get to the point of the punishment. Okay. So that's another way. Then the third way, I always say, is trust and verify. But verify, right? So when you assign a certain level of authority to someone, okay, you are trusting them to do it correctly. But go back and verify how it was done, whether due process was followed. Yes.
And those are some of the ways.
So those are some of the ways.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let me come in studio and bring Omanpenyi into the conversation. Now, Omanpenyi, I want to know what are the regulatory frameworks or requirements that businesses must follow regarding internal controls? Are there any you may want to share?
Okay. Basically, there are plenty in terms of internal control system. I always tell my students that if you are going to audit any company and you see that their internal control systems are weak, throw the financial statement away. Just throw it away. Because if internal controls are weak, we presuppose anything can happen. Expenditure won't be recorded. A lot of issues won't be done. So just throw the financial statement away if internal controls are weak. But if internal controls are strong, it means that the financial statement figures can be trusted. Figures, as now was saying, figures can be verified. There will be a consensus argument. Our minds will meet at one place. This figure is 5 is 5. So when it comes to frameworks around, I think we are coming from auditing side, the internal audit agencies have put in place a lot of issues up which we can adhere to in terms of internal control system. And I think when it comes to, this was basically done for the public sector institutions, but when it comes to the private sector institutions, there should be a strong, let's say, framework that will back the internal control systems. And the challenge is with management employing the same people to also be the internal auditors or internal risk compliance officers. Some of the companies, they have risk compliance officers, internal auditors, and some of the internal auditors are also being employed by the management of the organization. So when it comes to framework, we can't pinpoint specific frameworks that will help us to man the activities of internal control systems.
Okay. All right. Do you have any? But if not, then maybe I should stay with you for a few minutes, Omanpenyi.
Okay.
Now, do you think, because you mentioned internal audits, the same people doing it and all of that, do you think that financial audits should be done internally or outsourced for better transparency?
Oh, basically for internal audit, internally, if they are being employed by management, then their independence will be compromised. It will be impaired. Okay. But if those charged with governance or those, let's say, they are not being employed by management, but they are employed by the audit committee, shareholders who owns the business, and they are not part of management, then it will be the best.
Right.
They can be with the organization, but the way of employment supposed not to come from management. Okay. Because they are checking management, and since they are checking management and management is employing them, it means that they will be compromised. Do you get it? So external can be done, but for the external, you don't have control over your data. So for the best practice, for me, I think that there should be from those charged with governance or the audit committee or the shareholders employing them to get a better pictorial of things happening internally, because they don't report to them. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So the independence is what you're highlighting.
Yes, please.
Right.
Yes, please.
Okay, that's great. Now let me come to I'm going to come to you, Anastasia, very soon. But if you have anything, just because you are in studio with me.
So some of the best practices as accountants, we follow certain standards.
Okay.
So the international financial standards, it can guide us in our transactions, and also internal controls again. Then also we have to make sure that we report our transactions on a timely manner at all times.
Okay.
Yes.
That helps as well. All right, that's great. Let me go to Mr. Richard Kumado. Sir, I want to know, are there some new technologies that are helping companies improve their internal controls?
Oh, it goes, when you take depend on the size of the business and the organization and what to do. Internal control requirements or criteria for HR department or talent development might be different strictly from the internal control objectives or criteria for the internal control people themselves or internal audit or compliance. And what we are looking at as a result of management decisions, because you remember, if you want to stop fraud, the tone at the top is very important. And that is what my brother was talking about, management and key management decisions. Because it is the tone at the top that drives the organization. So when we talk about internal control elements, it cuts across everywhere, whether is it the security department, is it admin, or is it HR, is it talent, is it training, or is it production? It depends on what you want to look at. For people in the production line, particularly within the supply chain, they will want a system that helps them to avoid bottlenecks and system breakdowns and shutdowns. Other than that, internal criminal gangs will use sudden shutdowns to make money because there will be a shortfall, or it may lower the competitiveness of the organizations they work in to give a comparative cost advantage to their competitors, which are fraud because they have not stolen money, but they slow down the process. So, my brother, it depends on, there again, it depends on the organization and what we are looking at. Some other people may opt for internally, sort out networks and systems. Others may also buy off the shelf. And so that is the resources available to them. But it has to be specific to what you do and what the objectives are.
Right. Okay. So thank you for those thoughts. I don't know if
can I go off now?
You want to leave us?
One?
Yes, I'll come back to you for a last point before we go off. Sorry.
I want to run away and leave everything for now.
I understand. I understand. Okay. Now,
yeah.
Now, just because you want to go, maybe I should ask: how can businesses protect their internal data from cyber criminals?
Say that one again.
How can businesses protect their internal data from cyber criminals? I want you to be very
yes. Because business, you made it open. Yeah. Specific, go specific. So because it's a business, take a university for instance. Who controls the server? And how many people have data on the same server? Is it outsourced? Yeah, some of the investigations we've done, you have many organizations, many financial institutions, and many manufacturing or retail businesses sharing server with some other people managed by the same provider. When something goes wrong, the degree and the impact could be huge. But what you are looking at for a system efficiency, where from generation of the data, the quality of the data, the storage, the retrieval, processing, and reprocessing. You ask yourself, the cybersecurity architecture you have, is it capable of doing these 5 things for you? And where there are infractions, how early are you to identify them? And when you identify them, can you provide a mitigation factor or a strategy within the shortest time that deals with the excesses of the breach or the lapses that might have occurred. Because I told you, every system comes with inherited vulnerabilities, and that is what it is. So it depends on which organization, but they are mindful of the generation of the data entry through the quality of the data, the storage, the retrieval, processing and reprocessing again. So they want to look at the chain and see if they are getting value for money.
Okay, all right. So thank you. I now I can let you go.
I'm sending you an invoice. Right?
Well, we are grateful. We are grateful for your time. Because you have to run, we'll let you go now. Thank you very much. Now let me come back to and then we come and end everything in studio. Is that fine? All right. So please, are you there? Hello, Na.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Now, I know another aspect of internal control. I mean, when we're having an internal control conversation, another part that we need to focus on is also workplace theft. Workplace theft, which is a very crucial matter. Now, what are some of the most common forms of theft in the workplace?
Okay, so I'll say the most common is pilfering, right? Where people take stuff in bets. Okay, so let's say we bought a box of paper. We know it will last us for 3 months before we realize it's 1 month. And that's because not that people carried the reams of paper away, but they took them. Oh, I need paper for my daughter to draw. They'll take 10 sheets. Somebody will say, I need paper to print X. They'll take 5 sheets. Okay.
Yeah.
And especially if you have manufacturing workplaces. Okay, that are manufacturing consumer goods, for instance. It's very easy for people to they find ways and means. I heard a story of a soap manufacturing company that the soap bars were intact. Nobody was stealing the soap bars. So apparently what the shop floor guys were doing was, after the mix, before they put it in the bar machine, right? They knew exactly how the CCTV cameras were timed, and they had mini containers, and it's so fast. Okay, they pour, and so the business was losing small bits of the soap at a time, which of course eventually will lead to large losses. I'm sure Anas and Omampin as accountants will tell you that work in progress loss is quite huge, often in a lot of places. And the other common ones is, so I've spoken about office stuff that gets missing, pens that get lost, and admin will be complaining about buying a new box of pens every week, right? Or every 3 days or something. And then I've actually seen where people have carried away computers, and under the guise of, we really needed to work on something and over the weekend, and our laptops is not enough, so we needed an extra computer. And of course, they come back on Monday with a police report that thieves broke into their house and the computers never came back.
Right.
Okay. Yes. So there are different types of workplace theft. The biggest at time, okay, where when you are employed, I'm expecting that at least 8 to 10 hours of your day you're spending doing my work, right? But then some people will do 4 hours of the employer's work and spend the other 4 hours doing their own work. Okay, so they have micro businesses. In software development, we call it moonlighting. So somebody's working mainly for you. They've signed up to do full-time work for you, okay? And they are moonlighting by consulting elsewhere, okay? And so either they moonlight at night, so by the time it's morning and you have put them on a morning shift, they are very tired. So you lose quite a lot of productivity due to them being tired. Or at the time where they're supposed to be doing your work, they're actually doing their private work. So there are different versions of workplace theft, and it depends on what you're selling. Okay. And in Ghana, what is very worrying is where people take parts of your process, because intellectual property is not so much only in your brands and what you've written down, but it's also in the minds of people. Okay, so they take away the parts of your processes they've learned and they go and start their own businesses. It doesn't matter whether you have a confidentiality agreement with them or not, because most employers are hesitant to prosecute people.
Right.
Right. So they take your idea, and all of a sudden, something that you were doing, that you were making money, they push down your share value. Okay. So they disrupt your business technically by doing what you're doing. So if you take, for example, the example of what used to be space to space, MTN started with a few vendors, they trained them, all of a sudden, people just were like, but why do we have to wait for MTN? All we need is a phone. So they buy a phone, they get a chip, and they start their own business. And everywhere in Ghana was overrun by space-to-space businesses. Of course, they totally put out the first few businesses that started it out of business. Okay, so workplace theft is real, and it's really, really worrying. It does round down businesses. If you are a supermarket, for instance, some supermarkets lose as much as boxes of goods every day by people just taking, let's say, 2 sardines, 1 corned beef, 2 tins of milk. And then when they do their month-end stock audits, the audits, the stock in the warehouse versus what's on the shop floor don't match.
They don't match.
And what has been told don't match. It's
right.
Quite worrying.
Okay,
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to come back to you for some measures that organizations can put in place to discourage that. But let me come to Anastasia. I think she has some to add, some of the workplace. I don't know whether... Yeah.
She has said it all, but some of them too can be with the time sheets. Maybe you are supposed to log in 8 o'clock, and you see that a number of people have logged in 8 o'clock. It means that they didn't even report to work at that time. So even when they are calculating their hours, they are calculating it wrongly for them because they didn't log in at that particular time.
Right.
I remember those times, anytime Oman is teaching us, he was our group leader during our master's school. You'd be like, don't go and print your things at the workplace. So it's also stealing. Then everybody will be like, oh. So we have done certain things at our workplaces that we sometimes think it's not stealing. Like we are okay with it. Like picking the company's car and just moving to buy food. You are wasting the company's fuel, or using the company's car during weekends. You think, oh, it is fine. It has been given to you. So you have that chance to use it. And sometimes too, as accountants too, because we keep petty cash, we have the, I don't know what I say, temptation of picking some of the money. Then when you're supposed to produce a certificate, ANA certificate or receipt, you go and see somebody, oh, Charlie, this, then they write it for you quickly. You're supposed to procure certain things, then you go, maybe the laptop is 2,000 plus. You tell the person, oh, Charlie, please write 2,500. You come. All these things are petty things. Yes.
Issues
yes.
Okay. Now, so Omamping, what do you think are some of the measures that organizations should put in place?
Okay. So basically, for me, I'll still stick to the SOSPAM that I just did explain. Okay. So if that issues are implemented, as now was explaining that if a system, you don't give authorization to everyone to go into the system. So if this person is approving this, there should be an end. Someone, the overall boss who approves everything.
Right.
Do you get it? So basically, is the SOSPAM, if being put in place, segregation of duty. The person operating this supposed not to do this in terms of the work. And we know most of the challenge too is we trying to employ a lot of people to man the activities. So we think that one person at the workplace, I always tell my students that you doing a lot of stuff at the workplace doesn't shows that you are hardworking or something. This person is in charge of cash. He's the same person in charge of operations, the same person in charge of this. And he thinks that he feels that whilst doing all these things at the same time, it gives him some level of importance. You get it? There should be segregation of this so that we can see what everyone is bringing on board. Controls will be in place. Your activity ends here. The next person also take it from there. The next person activity also ends there. So when it comes to the accounting setting, to me, if you have the resources to employ, don't employ one accountant. Don't employ one accountant. There should be an accountant for payables, i.e. debt that you own, someone managing that receivable, someone managing that, someone managing the overall finance, get even treasury in terms of petty cash and other stuff, so that everyone will be manning over some of the activities, so that it won't be that I am the accountant of the organization.
You're sure there won't be conflicts?
No, when the segregation is clearly defined in the organizational structure I told you about.
Yeah.
I know that I am the payables accountant. I deal in payables.
Okay.
In terms of anything we are going to pay, I'm in charge.
You're in charge.
And this is my duty. Unless I'm going to relieve someone from other activities. And it will be for temporal.
Okay.
I'm in charge of receivables. In terms of debt, recovery, and other stuff. This department is in charge of treasury.
Right.
In terms of managing petty cash, managing this. Controls will be properly instilled.
Okay, great. Now let me go to Now maybe you have some to add, some measures that organizations can put in place to discourage employee theft.
Okay, I mean, so I do agree with Oma Payne's SOSPAN, right? The other thing you can add is the soft part, the HR part, if you like. So that is the disciplinary.
Sorry, I didn't quite.
Also,
hello, Na.
Can you hear me?
Sorry, I didn't
yes,
quite
can
get
you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I didn't quite get you. Kindly repeat what you said.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I was saying that I agree with the system Oma Payne has proposed, but you also have to add the soft part, right? So the training part where you train people for them to understand even the SOSPAN, right? The measures that are in place so that they are not contravening the rules. Of course, when you systemize it, some of the systems will throw them out anyway when they try certain things. But you still have to let them understand why it should not happen, because so you appeal to their conscience, if you like, during the training. Then you have disciplinary measures. So disciplinary measures go from anything between a warning and actually imprisoning people for fraud. Okay, execution. So once people understand the lengths to which a business will go to protect its assets, and in the human resource being the key assets, okay, so like I protect you from yourself, they will often more or less fall in line. At least you have 80% compliance.
Okay.
And the 20%, of course, it's you try to mitigate it. Okay.
Okay.
So typically, those are the things you will put in place.
Right. Okay. So I think our time is up. Our time is up, unfortunately.
Okay.
I've enjoyed the conversation so much. But just in 30 seconds, let me go to now, then I come and end in the studio. In 30 seconds, what advice would you give to an organization looking to strengthen their internal control in 30 seconds?
Okay, so I'll say make sure you've covered all your risks and communicate.
Okay.
Let it sink into the heads of your employees.
Right.
Talk about it till they can't do anything but do the right thing. Yes.
Thank you very much, Na. Now let me come to Anastasia, and then I end with Oman.
So, as accountants, we have always been told to be honest, to be confident, to keep confidentiality. Our professional due care. So when we are able to practice all these things, it helps the organizations in their internal controls. And when internal controls are very strong, it helps the company to grow. And once the company grows, we'll also be satisfied because our salaries will be increased and we'll get all the benefits needed.
Thank you very much. Now, let me finally come to Oman.
Okay. So basically, they should put in place whatever that the organization has. They have tried to, like, when it comes to internal control systems, what are their policy document?
Okay.
They should make sure that the policy document is being implemented.
Right.
Basically.
Okay.
Okay. So will we get the opportunity to say some few words to loved ones?
Okay, go ahead.
Because tomorrow is tomorrow is my wife's birthday.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so let me use this opportunity to say happy birthday in advance to Mrs. Diane Grant Oseko.
Okay.
She has been a wonderful person, and since your medium is a great platform. Let me use this platform to say happy birthday to her, more grace, and she also try to tolerate me sometimes. And secondly, let me also my pastor, my prophet, Prophet Michael Koneji, my boss at the workplace, giving me this time frame to also come and share this. Mr. Kumi, and my secretary at the office also, Regina, and everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mwampeni, and happy birthday to your happy birthday in advance to your wife. All right, thank you very much. We've had a very fruitful conversation. I'm very grateful that you came. Mwampeni as an auditor and also a lecturer, and then Anastasia is an accounting consultant, and then we were joined over Zoom by Naameli Krufi, actually, who is a human resource executive, and then Mr. Richard Kumado, who is a cybersecurity expert, and we've been talking about how to strengthen your internal controls as an organization, and we've said that the importance of proactive risk management cannot be overemphasized. Prevention is always better than crisis management, and there's a role of technology and also the value of strong ethical culture where employees are empowered to report fraud, and management leads by example. Thank you very much for joining us this morning here on the Business Breakfast on Zed. My name is Nitrebi Hammond. We meet again same time tomorrow, 6:15, and I drive you till 10. See you. Up next is The Brighter Side with NYA The Brand. Stay tuned.